Beneath the surface of our history lies a shadowed tapestry, woven not only with facts and dates but with questions that refuse to be answered. Civilizations rose and fell, leaving behind monuments of impossible precision, languages that remain unread, and artifacts that defy the very timeline of human progress. From the deserts of Egypt to the hidden valleys of South America and across the ancient ruins of Palestine, the echoes of something greater linger, silent, yet insistent. Why do so many cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, tell the same stories of gods descending from the sky? How were colossal stones carved, moved, and aligned with celestial bodies using methods we still struggle to replicate? And what knowledge did our ancestors hold that was lost, or perhaps hidden, over the passage of millennia? These are not just footnotes in dusty archives. They are mysteries that continue to challenge the very foundations of what we believe about ourselves. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the unexplained mysteries of human history. Secrets that may change the way we see our world forever. Beneath the surface of human imagination, and perhaps beneath the waves of our oceans, lies a mystery that has endured for more than 2,000 years. The story of Atlantis, a city said to be radiant with wealth, advanced in knowledge and dazzling in architecture, yet gone in a single day and night of catastrophe. We begin not in some remote excavation site or beneath the sands of forgotten empires, but in the words of one man, Plato. In the 4th century BC, the philosopher recorded a tale he claimed came from much earlier traditions, passed down from Solon, one of Athens' most revered lawmakers. According to Plato's Timaeus and Critias, Atlantis was a mighty civilization that flourished 9,000 years before his own time. It lay, he wrote, beyond the Pillars of Heracles, the narrow straits we now call Gibraltar. There, across the Atlantic, he described a land larger than Libya and Asia combined, a naval power that once threatened the very freedom of the ancient Mediterranean world. Yet in a single night, the earth shook, the seas rose, and Atlantis vanished beneath the waves, leaving behind only rumor and memory. For many, this passage has always been allegory, a moral story invented by Plato to warn against arrogance, excess, and the corruption of power. And yet, the details he includes are strikingly specific. The ringed canals, the temples shimmering with precious metals, the armies and fleets numbering in the thousands. Was this truly just a philosopher's parable? Or was Plato echoing an older tradition, one rooted in events long forgotten? If we step back into the landscape of the Bronze Age, we find civilizations rising and falling across the Mediterranean, Crete, Mycenae, Egypt, and beyond. Around 1600 BC, the island of Thera, today known as Santorini, erupted in one of the most violent volcanic explosions in recorded history. The blast sent tidal waves surging across the Aegean, shattering settlements, and perhaps even crippling the Minoan civilization, a culture famed for its seafaring power and palatial grandeur. The similarities to Plato's tale are difficult to ignore. Could Atlantis have been an echo of the Minoans, preserved in fragments of oral tradition until the philosopher shaped it into his story? Others look farther afield. Some suggest that Atlantis might have been in the western Mediterranean, perhaps in southern Spain, where archaeological sites such as Doñana show traces of ancient settlements swallowed by marsh and sea. There, concentric patterns in the land hint at man-made design, reminiscent of Plato's description of circular canals. Could the lost city lie beneath European soil, buried in mud and time? And yet, theories are not confined to the Old World. Across the Atlantic, some have wondered whether Plato's account preserves distant memories of cultures in the Americas, advanced, unfamiliar to the Greeks, and linked through stories carried by sailors. While mainstream historians caution against stretching the evidence, the allure of such a connection lingers. The mystery deepens when we consider geological records. The end of the last ice age, around 10,000 BC, brought dramatic changes to global coastlines. Vast tracts of land were swallowed as glaciers melted and seas rose. Entire shorelines disappeared, and with them, perhaps, settlements whose names we will never know. Could Atlantis be not one city, but a memory of many, fragments of drowned cultures compressed into a single tale? Throughout history, the myth has refused to fade. In the Middle Ages, monks copied Plato's writings, ensuring the story survived into the modern age. During the Age of Exploration, when new continents were being charted and old maps redrawn, Atlantis took on fresh significance. Explorers speculated that perhaps the fabled land was not lost at all, but rediscovered in the Americas. Writers in the Renaissance, too, looked to Plato's account as a key to understanding both the achievements and the hubris of mankind. In more recent centuries, the story has drifted further still, from the hands of philosophers into the realm of mystics, visionaries, and speculative thinkers. The 19th century saw Atlantis reimagined as a cradle of all human civilization, a place where advanced technology, spiritual wisdom, and ancient knowledge converged before dispersing across the globe. Some writers even suggested that the pyramids of Egypt, the megaliths of Britain, and the temples of the Americas all bore the fingerprint of Atlantis's lost influence. Though historians remain cautious, the persistence of these ideas speaks to a deeper human yearning to explain the unexplainable, to find origins for mysteries scattered across time. Even today, scientists and explorers search the seabed for clues. From the Caribbean to the Azores, sonar surveys and underwater archaeology occasionally reveal structures that ignite speculation. Straight lines, geometric shapes, formations that some insist are not natural. Are these remnants of Atlantis, or merely the tricks of geology misread through the lens of expectation? And so we return to the question, what is Atlantis? A moral tale from a philosopher's pen? A distorted memory of real catastrophe, like the eruption of Thera? A mythic amalgamation of lost coastal peoples erased by the rising seas of the Ice Age? Or something more? A reminder that perhaps our story, the story of humanity, is not yet fully known? The city remains hidden, if it ever existed at all. Its towers may lie buried beneath volcanic ash, drowned beneath shifting tides, or resting only in the imagination of those who yearn for a world greater than the one we know. But the silence of the ocean holds many secrets. And as long as the waves continue to crash against the shore, the legend of Atlantis will endure, inviting us to wonder what truths still lie beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. From the restless waters of the Arabian Sea, the land stretches inland toward the plains of what is now Pakistan and northwestern India. Here, beneath layers of earth and silence, lie the remnants of one of humanity's earliest great civilizations, the Indus Valley Civilization. Also known as Harappan culture, its cities flourished nearly 4,500 years ago, rivaling those of Mesopotamia and Egypt. Yet today, the ruins stand quietly in the sun, their streets and walls whispering of a people who seemed to vanish as suddenly as they appeared. Walk through the excavated ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, and you find streets laid out in precise grids, running north to south and east to west. Houses built of uniform baked bricks stand shoulder to shoulder, some rising 2 stories high. There are courtyards, wells, and even what appears to be an early form of indoor plumbing. Most striking of all is the Great Bath, an immense, carefully sealed pool, perhaps used for ritual purification. These details speak of order, planning, and a people deeply concerned with both community and ritual. Yet, for all its achievements, the Indus Valley Civilization left behind no monuments proclaiming kings, no triumphal stelae, no sprawling temples filled with gods. Instead, their art is subtle, their inscriptions short and undeciphered, their power quietly expressed through engineering rather than conquest. It is a society at once advanced and enigmatic, hinting at a worldview very different from that of its contemporaries. And then, silence. By around 1900 BC, the great cities began to decline. Streets grew empty, houses fell into disrepair, and eventually the settlements were abandoned. A civilization that had thrived for nearly a millennium seemed to dissolve into the mists of history. Why? The mainstream explanations are many. Some scholars point to shifting rivers. The Saraswati, once a mighty waterway, began to dry, while the Indus itself may have altered course. Without fertile plains and reliable water, the agricultural backbone of Harappan society could have faltered. Others suggest climate change, a prolonged drought weakening harvests, forcing people to scatter in search of sustenance. Archaeological evidence of malnutrition and disease lends weight to this theory, painting a picture of gradual decline rather than sudden collapse. Yet not all is so easily explained. Some researchers note signs of violence in later layers of Mohenjo-Daro, skeletons lying in the streets, postures suggesting they fell in flight. Were they victims of invasion? The Aryan migration theory, once dominant, suggested that nomadic tribes swept in from Central Asia, bringing with them the early Sanskrit language and Vedic traditions. But newer studies cast doubt on the idea of a sudden military conquest. Could these bodies instead reflect smaller conflicts, disease, or even ritual practices we cannot yet understand? Then there is the puzzle of their script. Hundreds of seals and tablets bear symbols, stylized animals, geometric signs, and short clusters of markings. Despite decades of study, the Indus script remains undeciphered. Was it a full language, recording laws and prayers? Or something more limited, perhaps marks of trade or ownership? If the words of the Harappans could be read, might they reveal what truly befell their cities? For now, the silence of their writing adds another layer to the mystery. Some have gone further, venturing into speculative territory. A few suggest that catastrophic floods or earthquakes may have struck the region, wiping out entire settlements in moments. The Indus region, after all, lies along active fault lines. Could nature itself have dealt the fatal blow? Others propose that the civilization did not truly vanish, but transformed, its people dispersing, their traditions flowing quietly into later Indian cultures. Elements of their urban planning, artistic motifs, and religious symbols may live on, hidden in plain sight. And then there are the fringe ideas, whispers of advanced knowledge lost to time. The sophistication of their drainage systems, the uniformity of their bricks, the sheer scale of their cities, all accomplished without clear evidence of centralized rulers or armies. How did a civilization so seemingly egalitarian achieve such order? Was there a guiding principle, a hidden structure, or perhaps knowledge we have not yet uncovered? One of the most haunting aspects of the Indus mystery is its quietness. Unlike the collapse of Rome, marked by invasions and records, or the fall of the Maya, still visible in jungle temples, the Harappans left behind no laments, no chronicles. They faded, leaving only brick and clay, mute witnesses to their story. Did they walk away willingly, step by step, as rivers dried and harvests failed? Or did catastrophe sweep over them, leaving no time for farewells? As we stand today among the ruins, the silence presses in. Broken seals stare back with unreadable symbols. The great bath lies dry, its steps worn but still dignified. Streets, once bustling with merchants and families, are empty under the desert sun. The Indus Valley, Civilization, one of the world's great cradles of culture, offers us knowledge and questions in equal measure. And perhaps that is its greatest legacy, not just what it accomplished, but what it leaves us wondering. Was its disappearance a simple tale of nature and time, or does it conceal deeper truths about the fragility of human societies? What stories might still be buried beneath the dust, waiting for discovery? The ruins remain, silent yet insistent, asking us to look closer and to listen to what the earth has not yet revealed. The desert stretches endlessly, a sea of golden sand broken only by the silent colossi that rise from its heart. At Giza, under the unrelenting Egyptian sun, the Great Pyramids stand as they have for more than 4,000 years. Their vast geometric forms dominate the horizon, monuments both familiar and alien. No matter how many times they are seen, they never lose their power to astonish. Built from millions of limestone and granite blocks, some weighing as much as 70 tons, they remain among the most enduring enigmas of human history. How, in the 3rd millennium BC, were these extraordinary structures raised? The tools known to the ancient Egyptians were simple: copper chisels, wooden sledges, and ropes of twisted fiber. No pulleys, no steel, no machinery of the kind we might expect for work on such a colossal scale. And yet the Great Pyramid of Khufu rises nearly 500 feet into the sky, aligned with uncanny precision to the cardinal directions. Its base is almost perfectly level, deviating by mere inches across an expanse of more than 13 acres. Even today, with all the technology at our disposal, replicating such accuracy on this scale would be a formidable challenge. Mainstream archaeology offers carefully reasoned explanations. Large workforces, possibly numbering in the tens of thousands, may have hauled the stones across ramps of earth and mud brick. Recent discoveries of workers' villages near Giza support this idea. Rows of houses, bakeries, and burial grounds suggesting a community of skilled laborers rather than enslaved masses. The pyramids, then, may have been as much a testament to organization and social cohesion as to engineering skill. And yet questions persist. What kind of ramp could have borne stones so massive without collapsing under their weight? If a straight ramp was used, it would have needed to stretch for miles across the desert, requiring more material than the pyramid itself. Spiral or zigzagging ramps have been proposed, but physical evidence for them remains elusive. Without clear traces, the exact method remains hidden. The logistics of quarrying and transporting the stones are equally perplexing. The fine white limestone that once covered the pyramids came from quarries nearby, but the massive granite blocks in the king's chamber of Khufu's pyramid were brought from Aswan, over 500 miles to the south. How were these immense stones transported along the Nile, then dragged across the desert? Some evidence suggests that workers may have poured water on the sand ahead of sledges, reducing friction. Simple, ingenious, effective, but still astonishing given the size and weight involved. There is also the question of alignment. The Great Pyramid is oriented almost perfectly to true north, with an error of less than a fraction of a degree. Did the Egyptians use the stars? Some researchers believe they tracked the circumpolar constellations, adjusting their measurements over years until the orientation was exact. If so, the builders not only mastered architecture, but astronomy as well. From here, speculation deepens. Some have suggested that the pyramids encode mathematical or cosmological knowledge far ahead of their time, that the ratio of their dimensions reflects pi or the golden ratio, or that their placement mirrors the stars of Orion's belt. Are these deliberate choices or coincidences we impose on ancient design? The debate continues, fueled by the pyramid's enduring aura of mystery. More fringe theories propose even stranger possibilities. Were the Egyptians inheritors of knowledge from an earlier, forgotten civilization? Some claim that the precision of the pyramids points to techniques now lost to history, perhaps involving advanced tools or methods we cannot yet imagine. Others go further still, invoking extraterrestrial influence or lost technologies of unimaginable power. While such ideas fall outside accepted scholarship, their persistence speaks to the sheer improbability that such monuments could be raised with tools of stone, copper, and wood alone. Yet the truth may lie somewhere between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Human ingenuity, patience, and organization, applied over decades, can achieve results that appear miraculous. Still, the absence of definitive evidence, no surviving blueprints, no detailed construction records, ensures that the pyramids retain their silence. They stand as riddles in stone, guardians of secrets that perhaps were never meant to be written down. As the sun sets over Giza, the pyramids glow with the colors of fire, amber, crimson, deepening into shadow. Tourists and scholars alike walk their ancient causeways, gaze up at their perfect angles, and wonder, were these monuments simply tombs for mighty pharaohs, or did they serve a greater purpose? Were they symbols of divine power, or repositories of knowledge meant to endure across millennia? The stones themselves do not answer. They remain as they have always been, immovable, inscrutable, waiting. And so, the question lingers. How did a civilization more than 4,000 years ago accomplish what still defies our full understanding today? What secrets of construction, of purpose, of meaning, remain buried beneath the sands of Egypt, waiting for discovery? The pyramids endure, not only as monuments of stone, but as monuments of mystery, drawing us closer, daring us to uncover what they have guarded for so long. Along the Mediterranean coast, where waves crash against the harbors of ancient Egypt, once stood a city unlike any other, the gleaming metropolis of Alexandria. Founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BC, it quickly rose to become a beacon of trade, culture, and learning. At its heart lay a wonder not made of stone alone, but of knowledge, the Library of Alexandria. For centuries, it has lingered in memory not only as a physical place, but as a symbol of everything humanity gained, and everything it may have lost. Imagine entering its halls, towering shelves filled with papyrus scrolls, the air heavy with the faint scent of ink and reed. Scholars from Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and beyond gathered here, translating, debating, and preserving the wisdom of the known world. It was said to have contained hundreds of thousands of works, histories, philosophies, plays, scientific treatises. Some even claimed it held texts from as far as India, and records of knowledge older still, carried from cultures long vanished. If true, then within its walls lay not only the heritage of the ancient world, but perhaps the keys to mysteries we still struggle to solve. And yet, what became of this treasure house remains one of history's most haunting questions. The library does not stand today. Its shelves are empty, its knowledge scattered or destroyed. The accounts of its fate are contradictory, shadowed by myth as much as by fact. One version tells of Julius Caesar. In 48 BC, during his conflict in Egypt, Caesar's forces set fire to ships in Alexandria's harbor. The flames, according to some ancient sources, spread inland, consuming parts of the city. Did they reach the library? Some writers suggest that thousands of scrolls were destroyed in that moment, casualties of war and accident. But others argue that Caesar's fire touched only the warehouses near the port, perhaps where copies of texts were stored, leaving the main library intact. Another story points to later centuries. Around the 3rd century AD, during the reign of Emperor Aurelian, Alexandria was besieged. Fighting spread through the city, and parts of the famed Brucheian district, the quarter where the library was located, were destroyed. Could the library have been lost then, its scrolls turned to ash amidst the chaos of civil war? Still, another account emerges from the 4th century, when Theophilus, the Patriarch of Alexandria, ordered the destruction of pagan temples. Some believe the Serapeum, a grand temple that may have held part of the library's collection, was among the casualties. If true, this would mean that religious conflict, as much as war, played a role in the loss. And then there is the most controversial tale, one that places the blame in the 7th century, during the Arab conquest of Egypt. Medieval accounts claim that Caliph Omar ordered the remaining books to be burned, their pages used to fuel the city's baths for months. But historians caution, this story appears in sources written centuries later, raising doubts about its accuracy. Was it history or a legend invented long after the fact? What makes the mystery deeper still is the lack of certainty about what exactly was lost. Did the library truly contain texts from every corner of the ancient world? Was it as vast as later writers imagined, or have its contents been mythologized over time? Some argue that even if the main collection was destroyed, copies of many works survived elsewhere, in Athens, in Rome, in scattered private libraries. Others believe that entire bodies of knowledge may have disappeared forever. Accounts of vanished civilizations, scientific theories that might have advanced human understanding by centuries, even records of lands and peoples now forgotten. Could works describing advanced mathematics, mechanical inventions, or detailed maps of the world have been lost in the flames? Was there knowledge of medicine, astronomy, or engineering that might have changed the course of history had it survived? Or was the library less mythical than we imagine? A great collection, yes, but one whose treasures were not unique, and whose loss, though tragic, did not erase the ancient world's wisdom entirely. In recent years, archaeologists and historians have searched Alexandria for traces of the Great Library. Excavations near the ancient harbor have uncovered lecture halls and spaces that may once have been part of scholarly complexes. Yet no definitive remains of the library itself have been found. It is as if the building dissolved into time, leaving only the echoes of stories told centuries later. The uncertainty leaves us with more questions than answers. Was the library destroyed in a single catastrophic blaze, or did it wither gradually, its scrolls dispersed, neglected, or carried away by conquerors over centuries? Did it fall victim to fire, to politics, to religious conflict, or simply to the slow decay of papyrus and memory? Today, the Library of Alexandria endures less as a physical ruin than as a symbol, the image of all that humanity might achieve and all it might lose. A reminder that knowledge is fragile, that the ideas of generations can vanish if not preserved with care. And so, the mystery lingers. Was the library's destruction the greatest tragedy in the history of human learning, or has its legend grown larger than reality, a reflection of our own yearning for a lost golden age of wisdom? What truths were contained within its shelves, and how might our world be different had they survived? The answers remain hidden, somewhere between history and myth, leaving us to wonder what secrets still lie buried, waiting to be found. Beneath the shifting sands of time lies a question that has haunted historians, archaeologists, and seekers of the past for over 2,000 years. Where is the tomb of Alexander the Great? His empire stretched from Greece to Egypt, from the mountains of Persia to the edges of India. His armies marched farther and faster than any before him, reshaping the ancient world in little more than a decade. Yet the final resting place of the man who sought to be a living god remains one of history's most enduring mysteries. The story begins in Babylon, in 323 BC. After a night of feasting, Alexander, still only 32 years old, fell ill. Within days, the conqueror was dead. His body, it is said, lay lifeless in the palace, yet showed no signs of decay even after several days, a detail that led some of his followers to whisper that he had transcended mortality itself. But what followed was not peace, but chaos. With no clear heir, Alexander's generals divided his empire and quarreled over his body. For in antiquity, possession of a great man's remains was not merely symbolic. It was a claim to legitimacy, to divine favor, to power itself. Initially, it was said that Alexander's body was to be carried back to Macedonia to rest beside his ancestors. But somewhere along the journey, the procession was intercepted. Ptolemy, one of Alexander's trusted generals and soon-to-be ruler of Egypt, diverted the funeral cortege. The body was brought not to Macedonia, but to Memphis in Egypt, and later to Alexandria, the shining city Alexander himself had founded on the Mediterranean shore. For centuries afterward, writers spoke of the Soma, the tomb of Alexander, which became a place of pilgrimage for kings, emperors, and philosophers alike. Julius Caesar is said to have visited it, paying homage to the man he admired above all others. So too did Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, who reportedly viewed the body and placed a golden crown upon Alexander's head. Strabo, the Greek geographer, and other ancient sources confirm that the tomb stood in Alexandria, a site of veneration and wonder. And yet, at some point in late antiquity, the trail goes cold. Mentions of the tomb grow scarce, then vanish. By the 4th century AD, the Roman Emperor Theodosius I banned pagan worship, and some believe the shrine of Alexander may have fallen victim to this decree. Others point to the political and military upheavals that swept through Alexandria, the rise of Christianity, invasions, earthquakes, and shifting sands of empire. Did the tomb collapse? Was it destroyed? Or was it hidden, deliberately concealed to protect it from desecration? The theories are many, each as tantalizing as the last. Some archaeologists believe the tomb lies beneath the streets of modern Alexandria, buried under layers of construction, waiting to be uncovered. Excavations in the city have revealed temples, palaces, and vast necropolises, but no definitive sign of Alexander's resting place. Others propose that the body was moved, perhaps secretly reburied to safeguard it from enemies, or even taken back to Macedonia after all. There are also more speculative claims. In 2019, an archaeologist suggested that a monumental tomb uncovered in Amphipolis in northern Greece might once have been intended for Alexander, or at least for someone close to him. The scale and grandeur of the site seemed fitting, but no direct evidence has yet tied it to the conqueror himself. Meanwhile, some have pointed to sites as far afield as Siwa Oasis, the desert sanctuary where Alexander once consulted the oracle of Ammon. Could his body have been taken there, returning him to the place that confirmed his divine status? Then there are the fringe ideas. A few have claimed that Alexander's tomb might lie beneath Christian sanctuaries in Alexandria, its location deliberately obscured and sanctified under new layers of faith. Others even argue that stories of Alexander's incorruptible body hint at a relic preserved in secrecy, hidden away by guardians whose identities are now lost to time. Though these ideas stretch beyond the boundaries of mainstream scholarship, they remind us of how deeply the legend of Alexander has woven itself into human imagination. What makes the mystery especially poignant is the silence that surrounds it. Unlike other ancient kings whose tombs have been plundered or preserved, Alexander, one of history's greatest figures, has simply vanished from the archaeological record. We know his empire, his battles, his legacy in stone and story, but the body that inspired such reverence, the tomb that drew emperors, has disappeared as though it never was. Standing in modern Alexandria, amidst the noise of traffic and the press of daily life, it is difficult to imagine that beneath these streets may lie the greatest undiscovered tomb of antiquity. Somewhere beneath the modern cityscape, or perhaps beneath desert sands, could rest the conqueror who dreamed of uniting East and West, whose name still echoes across history. The fate of Alexander's tomb remains an open question. Was it lost through neglect, destroyed in conflict, or hidden so well that it has evaded discovery for over 1,600 years? And if it is ever found, what secrets might it reveal, not only about Alexander himself, but about the turbulent centuries that followed his death? For now, the answer remains elusive. The conqueror who once sought to rule the world still guards one final secret: the location of his own resting place. And so, the search continues, leaving us to wonder what truths lie buried, waiting for the moment when history decides to reveal them. Across the vast grasslands of Mongolia, where endless skies meet rolling steppe, the wind moves ceaselessly through tall grasses. It is a landscape that feels eternal, unchanging, vast, and silent. Somewhere within this expanse, if the legends are true, lies the burial site of Genghis Khan, the man who forged the largest contiguous empire the world has ever seen. His armies reshaped nations, his legacy still reverberates across continents. And yet, like Alexander before him, his final resting place has never been found. Genghis Khan died in 1227 AD during his campaign against the Western Xia dynasty in northern China. The chronicles tell us little of his death. Some say he succumbed to illness, others that he was wounded in battle. What followed was shrouded in deliberate secrecy. According to tradition, his body was carried back toward Mongolia, but his escort took extraordinary measures to conceal its path. Forests were trampled flat, rivers diverted, and witnesses, so the stories claim, were silenced to ensure that no one could trace the burial. One of the most enduring legends holds that 1,000 horses were driven over the site of his grave to erase all trace of it from the earth. Another claims that a river was diverted to flow over the tomb, sealing it forever beneath water. Whether myth or truth, these stories reveal the deep desire of the Mongols to guard their leader's rest from outsiders. For Genghis Khan was not only a conqueror, he was a figure of near-mythic status, a man believed to have been chosen by the eternal blue sky itself. But where exactly was he buried? The question has haunted explorers and scholars for centuries. Some accounts suggest that he was laid to rest near Burkhan Khaldun, a sacred mountain in Mongolia's Khenti range. Genghis himself is said to have declared the mountain holy, ordering that it be revered by his descendants. To this day, the region remains deeply significant in Mongolian culture, a place where history and spirituality intertwine. Yet, despite its symbolic weight, no definitive evidence of a tomb has been uncovered there. Others point to the Ordos region of northern China, where local traditions speak of a mausoleum dedicated to the Khan. But the structure that stands there today, though revered, is more shrine than tomb, an empty monument honoring his memory, not his remains. In modern times, expeditions have sought to solve the riddle. During the Soviet era, scholars attempted to locate the tomb using historical texts and local traditions, but the efforts were halted amid political sensitivities. In recent decades, satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar have been employed, scanning the Mongolian steppes for signs of hidden structures. Some surveys have revealed anomalies, patterns suggestive of burial mounds or hidden chambers, but without excavation, their secrets remain locked beneath the earth. Why, then, has the tomb never been unearthed? One answer lies in Mongolian tradition itself. For centuries, many Mongols have resisted attempts to locate or disturb their ancestors' resting place. To them, Genghis Khan's grave is sacred, and its secrecy a vital part of his legacy. Searching for it, they argue, risks desecration and dishonor. Thus, Even as technology advances, cultural respect has drawn a protective veil over the mystery. And yet, the imagination cannot help but wonder. If the tomb were to be found, what might it contain? Would we discover a burial rich with treasures, gilded weapons, armor, and offerings from across the empire? Might written records be unearthed, perhaps shedding light on the enigmatic governance of his vast domain? Or could the tomb be simple, austere, in keeping with Genghis Khan's nomadic roots? The very uncertainty is part of the allure. Some fringe theories go even further, suggesting that the Mongols' extraordinary efforts to conceal the site imply that the tomb holds secrets beyond wealth. Could it contain relics or knowledge deliberately hidden from the world? Or was the mystery of its location itself the ultimate tribute, a way of ensuring that Genghis Khan's presence would remain inseparable from the land he ruled? The burial site of Genghis Khan remains, to this day, one of archaeology's greatest unsolved puzzles. In a world where so much of the past has been uncovered, cataloged, and displayed, here is a secret that endures, shielded by geography, tradition, and perhaps by deliberate design. The Mongolian steppe, endless and unyielding, holds its silence. As the sun sets across the grasslands, the horizon burns with golden light. Somewhere out there, perhaps beneath a river's course or beneath the shadow of Burkhan Khaldun, lies the unmarked grave of the world's greatest conqueror. Is it hidden forever, protected by the vows of his people and the vastness of the steppe? Or will some future discovery finally pierce the veil of mystery? For now, the earth keeps its secret. The winds sweep across the plains, the grasses whisper in the silence, and Genghis Khan, emperor, warrior, legend, rests unseen. The question remains, will we ever find him, or is his burial meant to remain one of history's eternal mysteries? High on a windswept ridge in southeastern Turkey, the earth gives way to stone. Massive T-shaped pillars rise from the soil, carved with strange and vivid images: foxes and boars, serpents and vultures, their bodies etched in sharp relief against the ancient limestone. This is Göbekli Tepe, a site older than Stonehenge by millennia, older even than the pyramids of Egypt. To stand here is to feel the presence of a world that should not exist, a world that defies the timelines we once thought defined human history. Archaeologists estimate that construction at Göbekli Tepe began around 9,600 BC, at the very dawn of the Neolithic Age, at a time when human communities were still thought to be small, nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers. These enormous stone circles challenge everything we believed about early civilization. How, we must ask, could such people, without metal tools, without the wheel, without settled agriculture, raise pillars weighing up to 20 tons? Who organized the labor? Who possessed the vision? Mainstream scholarship tells us that hunter-gatherers gradually shifted toward farming, and with that stability came architecture, ritual, and eventually complex societies. But Göbekli Tepe turns this sequence on its head. Here, monumental architecture appears before farming, before permanent villages. Could it be that the desire to worship together, to create sacred space, was the catalyst that drove humans to settle down and cultivate the land? Did religion, rather than survival, spark civilization? The mysteries deepen when we look closer. The carvings are not random. Predatory animals, scorpions, vultures, and abstract symbols cluster in patterns that hint at meaning. Some scholars believe they may represent constellations, a record of the sky preserved in stone. Others suggest they encode myths, rituals, or shamanic visions. Could these be the earliest echoes of belief systems that later spread across Mesopotamia, Egypt, and beyond? And then there is the question of the builders themselves. Archaeological evidence shows that the site predates pottery, metallurgy, even written language. The people who built Göbekli Tepe left no names, no texts, no identifiable cultural markers beyond the stones themselves. Were they a singular community, inspired by something beyond their time? Or were they part of a wider network of forgotten peoples whose traces remain buried under the soil? Some researchers propose that the site was not a settlement, but a ceremonial center, a place where scattered groups gathered for ritual feasts, forging bonds and exchanging ideas. Animal bones found here suggest large-scale gatherings, perhaps seasonal festivals, that united tribes across the region. If so, Göbekli Tepe may represent the birthplace of organized religion, a stage where humanity first performed its collective myths beneath the stars. But other questions linger, unresolved. Why, after centuries of use, did the builders deliberately bury Göbekli Tepe under tons of earth? Was this an act of reverence, a way of sealing the sacred site for eternity? Or was it abandonment, a deliberate erasure by those who no longer understood its purpose? The intentional backfilling preserved the site for thousands of years, but it also obscured its meaning. Was this concealment itself part of the mystery? Theories have stretched into more speculative realms. Some suggest that the builders had knowledge far beyond what we credit them for. Early mastery of astronomy, engineering, perhaps even a mathematical system to design and align these vast stone enclosures. Others look beyond human invention entirely, wondering if outside influences, cataclysmic events, lost civilizations, or forgotten cultural exchanges played a role. Did survivors of some ancient disaster carry knowledge here, planting seeds of complexity long before the known dawn of cities? It is tempting to leap toward answers, to imagine hidden blueprints of civilization emerging from Göbekli Tepe's silent stones. Yet the truth remains elusive. Excavations continue, but only a fraction of the site has been uncovered. Beneath the hills, more circles, more pillars, and perhaps more revelations still lie buried. What might they reveal? A clearer timeline of human development, or deeper mysteries that challenge our understanding even further? Today, visitors to Göbekli Tepe walk among the stones under protective canopies, gazing at carvings that seem both alien and familiar. The fox with its pointed muzzle, the serpent coiled in eternal motion, the vulture looming with wings outstretched. All speak in a language older than writing, yet strangely universal. These images stir something primal, something that resonates across the gulf of 10,000 years. Standing there, one cannot help but ask, who were the people that carved these visions into stone? What compelled them to labor so mightily, to shape symbols that endure when their own names have vanished? And why, when their work was done, did they choose to bury it beneath the earth, leaving the stones to wait silently for discovery? Göbekli Tepe is not simply an archaeological site. It is a question carved in stone, a challenge to everything we thought we knew about human history. It whispers of forgotten worlds, lost knowledge, and the strange, winding paths that carried us from small bands of hunters to builders of vast civilizations. And so the mystery endures. Is Göbekli Tepe the birthplace of belief, the cradle of civilization itself? Or is it a fragment of something even older, a remnant of a story still untold? As the winds sweep across the Anatolian plateau, the stones remain silent. The answers, if they exist, lie buried still, waiting for the day when we may finally uncover what humanity has so long forgotten. Deep within the jungles of Central America, the ruins of once mighty cities lie hidden beneath a thick canopy of green. Towering pyramids rise from the earth like silent sentinels, their limestone steps weathered by centuries of rain and creeping vines. Carved stelae stand frozen in time, their inscriptions a language of kings, gods, and celestial cycles. These are the remnants of the Maya, a civilization that flourished for centuries, and then, almost without warning, collapsed. The Maya were master builders, astronomers, and mathematicians. From around 2000 BC to the early centuries of the first millennium, they developed one of the most advanced cultures of the ancient world. At its height, the civilization stretched across present-day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. Cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Copan rose as centers of political power and spiritual devotion, each marked by towering temples and sprawling plazas. The Maya tracked the movements of the stars with uncanny precision, created calendars that rivaled and even surpassed those of their contemporaries, and developed a written language that preserved myths, histories, and royal lineages. And yet, by the 9th century AD, something changed. One by one, the great cities of the southern lowlands were abandoned. The plazas fell silent, the rituals ceased, and the jungle reclaimed what had once been vibrant centers of life. For reasons still not fully understood, the Maya civilization, one of the most enduring of the ancient world, experienced a dramatic and sudden collapse. Theories abound, each offering a piece of the puzzle, but none providing a definitive answer. Environmental evidence suggests that prolonged droughts may have devastated crops, disrupting the delicate balance between population and resources. Without food, even the most resilient societies falter. Could climate have turned the heavens against a people who once read the stars so faithfully? Others point to the strain of overpopulation. As cities grew, the demand for agricultural land increased. Forests were cleared, soils depleted, and resources stretched thin. Did the very success of the Maya sow the seeds of their downfall, creating an ecological crisis that could no longer be contained? Political instability adds another layer of mystery. The Maya were not a unified empire, but a network of competing city-states, each led by powerful dynasties. Alliances shifted, rivalries deepened, and wars erupted with increasing frequency. Archaeological evidence shows signs of fortified walls, mass graves, and violent upheaval. Did internal conflict weaken the civilization from within, leaving it vulnerable to collapse? And then there is the role of belief. For the Maya, the world was governed by cycles, cosmic rhythms that dictated life and death, creation and destruction. Their kings were more than rulers, they were mediators between gods and mortals. If drought, famine, and war overwhelmed the land, did the people lose faith in their leaders, in the rituals meant to sustain cosmic order? Could the spiritual collapse have mirrored the political and environmental decline? Speculative theories push the mystery further. Some have suggested that natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, or volcanic eruptions may have played a part, sudden catastrophes that erased stability overnight. Others propose that the Maya were victims of epidemics, diseases spreading through crowded cities and decimating populations. There are even more fringe suggestions that the Maya possessed astronomical knowledge that foretold cosmic events, leading to mass migrations or ritual abandonments we can no longer fully trace. Yet the truth may not lie in one cause, but in a convergence of many. Drought, overpopulation, warfare, and shifting belief systems, together forming a perfect storm that brought even the greatest cities to their knees. Still, this explanation leaves something unresolved. If the collapse was inevitable, why did some centers continue to thrive in the northern Yucatan, even as the southern lowlands fell silent? Why did Chichen Itza rise as others crumbled? Was the collapse truly sudden, or a more complex transformation, one that still resists simple answers? Today, the ruins whisper in silence. At Tikal, pyramids pierce the jungle canopy, their summits offering views of endless green stretching to the horizon. At Copan, intricate carvings of rulers and deities still stand in delicate detail. These places, once filled with ritual and life, are now overrun by howler monkeys and the calls of tropical birds. They remind us not only of what was lost, but of what we may never fully understand. What became of the people themselves? The Maya did not vanish entirely. Their descendants still live across Central America, keeping alive elements of language, tradition, and belief. But the grandeur of the cities, the monumental architecture and sophisticated political systems, dissolved into memory. What compelled entire populations to leave behind such achievements, walking away from the very foundations of their civilization? The mystery of the Maya collapse continues to draw scholars, archaeologists, and curious minds from around the world. Each excavation, each deciphered glyph, brings us closer to an answer, but also deeper into the questions. Was the fall of the Maya a warning about the fragility of complex societies? A reminder that even the most advanced civilizations are vulnerable to forces beyond their control? Or was it simply the end of one cycle and the beginning of another, as the Maya themselves believed? A shift not of disappearance, but of transformation? The ruins remain, caught between silence and revelation, between what we know and what we cannot yet grasp. And as we walk among their crumbling temples and carved monuments, we cannot help but wonder, what, in the end, caused such a brilliant civilization to fall? And more importantly, how much of their story still lies hidden beneath the jungle, waiting for us to rediscover? What became of the people themselves? The Maya did not vanish entirely. Their descendants still live across Central America, keeping alive elements of language, tradition, and belief. But the grandeur of the cities, the monumental architecture and sophisticated political systems, dissolved into memory. What compelled entire populations to leave behind such achievements, walking away from the very foundations of their civilization? The mystery of the Maya collapse continues to draw scholars, archaeologists, and curious minds from around the world. Each excavation, each deciphered glyph, brings us closer to an answer, but also deeper into the questions. Was the fall of the Maya a warning about the fragility of complex societies? A reminder that even the most advanced civilizations are vulnerable to forces beyond their control? Or was it simply the end of one cycle and the beginning of another, as the Maya themselves believed? A shift not of disappearance, but of transformation? The ruins remain, caught between silence and revelation, between what we know and what we cannot yet grasp. And as we walk among their crumbling temples and carved monuments, we cannot help but wonder, what, in the end, caused such a brilliant civilization to fall? And more importantly, how much of their story still lies hidden beneath the jungle, waiting for us to rediscover? The Mediterranean today hides more than just its shifting currents and ancient shipwrecks. Beneath its waves and buried in the forgotten soils of its coasts may lie the key to understanding who these people were and why they came. Until then, we are left with fragments, images of ships carved in stone, broken pottery scattered across ruins, and stories passed down by those who resisted their advance. Their mystery lingers like a shadow on the horizon. What hidden truths still lie beneath the earth and the sea, waiting to tell us who the sea peoples really were? And if we could finally hear their voices, would the story be one of conquest or of survival? Beneath the blue waters of the Aegean Sea, just off the small Greek island of Antikythera, a shipwreck lay undisturbed for nearly 2,000 years. When divers first stumbled upon it in 1901, they expected treasures of a familiar kind: bronze statues, amphorae, jewelry, and coins. And indeed, they found them. But among the artifacts coated in centuries of marine encrustation was a corroded lump of bronze and wood, seemingly unremarkable. Only later, after careful study, would this object reveal itself to be something extraordinary, a device so complex, so far ahead of its time, that it would come to be known as the Antikythera Mechanism. At first glance, it resembles nothing more than fragments of rusted gears fused together by time. Yet as scholars began to analyze its structure, they uncovered a startling truth. This ancient Greek device, dated to around the 2nd century BC, contained a sophisticated system of interlocking gears designed to predict celestial events. The mechanism could calculate the movements of the sun and moon, track eclipses, and even forecast the cycles of the Olympic Games. In effect, it was the world's first known analog computer, crafted more than 1,000 years before anything similar would appear in Europe. The discovery poses a fundamental question. How did such an advanced piece of technology come to exist in the ancient world? Mainstream explanations often point to the flourishing intellectual climate of Hellenistic Greece. This was the era of Archimedes, Hipparchus, and other brilliant minds who advanced mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. Could the Antikythera mechanism have been the product of such genius, a rare invention that happened to survive against the odds? The precision of its gears, cut so finely that they rival those of 18th century clockmakers, suggests not an experiment, but a culmination of highly developed craftsmanship. Was this a single marvel, or part of a lost tradition of mechanical design? Some historians argue that the device reflects knowledge we know existed at the time. Greek astronomers had already developed geometric models of planetary motion, and engineers were building water clocks and automata. Perhaps the Antikythera mechanism was simply an extraordinary extension of this ingenuity, proof that the ancients were capable of far more than we often credit them for. And yet, the mystery deepens when we consider its uniqueness. No other device of similar complexity has ever been recovered from antiquity. If such technology existed, why have no others survived? Was the mechanism a prototype, crafted by a single workshop for a wealthy patron, and then lost to history? Or does its isolation suggest that we are glimpsing only a fragment of a wider, forgotten world of mechanical knowledge? More speculative ideas have emerged as well. Some propose that the device reflects not just Greek genius, but a convergence of knowledge from across the ancient Mediterranean, Egyptian astronomy, Babylonian mathematics, and Greek engineering combined into a single object. Could the Antikythera mechanism represent the hidden fruits of cultural exchange, a technology born at the crossroads of civilizations? Others push further still, asking whether the mechanism hints at knowledge that has otherwise vanished completely. Did earlier civilizations, perhaps long before classical Greece, develop technologies we no longer recognize, their innovations erased by time, war, or disaster? The Antikythera mechanism, in this view, is not an anomaly, but a clue, a surviving echo of something far older, perhaps even predating the histories we know. Still more fringe theories imagine secrets of extraordinary scope. Could the precision of the mechanism suggest access to advanced astronomical data, perhaps gathered from sources we cannot explain? Were its builders guided by lost manuscripts, or even by knowledge carried from civilizations now forgotten? While such ideas remain speculative, they capture the enduring sense of wonder the device inspires. Modern science has brought us closer to understanding, but not to resolution. Using advanced imaging techniques, researchers have reconstructed much of the mechanism's design. They have identified over 30 bronze gears, inscriptions hidden within the corroded metal, and a layout that reveals its function as a cosmic calculator. Yet, even now, debates continue. Was the mechanism intended solely for astronomy, or did it also serve navigational purposes? Was it a teaching tool, a scientific instrument, or perhaps even a sacred object, blending practical knowledge with religious meaning? Standing before the fragments today in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, one is struck not only by their intricacy but by their fragility. This device, so delicate in design and so powerful in purpose, survived only because it was hidden within a shipwreck. How many others, equally sophisticated, may have been lost forever, dissolved by time, destroyed in war, or simply buried beneath the earth? The Antikythera Mechanism forces us to reconsider the boundaries of ancient knowledge. Were the ancients far more advanced in their mechanical understanding than we have believed? Or is this an isolated miracle, a singular leap of genius whose origins may never be fully explained? As the gears of the mechanism rest in their glass case, they remain silent, withholding their full story. And we are left to wonder, how much of human history lies hidden in the depths of the sea, waiting to surface? What other inventions, what other marvels might still be out there, awaiting discovery and reshaping everything we thought we knew about the ancient world? Across the barren plains of southern Peru, under a blazing sun that seems to bleach the very earth itself, strange lines stretch endlessly across the desert floor. From the ground, they appear as faint, shallow grooves etched into the soil, winding across the arid landscape in patterns that make little sense to the human eye. But from above, where few in antiquity could have ever seen them, their true form emerges. Colossal geoglyphs, some spanning hundreds of feet, depicting animals, plants, geometric shapes, and paths that cut straight and true for miles. These are the Nazca Lines, one of humanity's most enduring enigmas. First rediscovered in the 1920s by pilots flying over the desert, the lines revealed a scale and precision that stunned the modern world. Monkeys, spiders, hummingbirds, and whales emerge from the ground as if drawn by some vast, unseen hand. Triangles and trapezoids run arrow-straight across the plateau, while spirals and abstract forms interlace with them. Created between 500 BC and 500 AD by the Nazca culture, these designs have endured for centuries, preserved by the desert's arid climate and the near absence of wind and rain. But the question remains, why were they made? What purpose did they serve for the people who painstakingly cleared the reddish pebbles from the desert surface to reveal the pale earth beneath, creating designs so large they could not be fully seen from the ground? Mainstream scholarship offers a range of explanations. Some suggest that the lines had an astronomical function. Studies of alignments propose that certain geoglyphs correspond to the positions of the sun, moon, or stars at significant points of the year. Could these lines have served as a kind of vast, open-air observatory, marking solstices, equinoxes, and other celestial events critical for agriculture? For a culture dependent on the rhythms of rain and drought, the ability to predict seasonal changes would have been invaluable. Others see in the lines a ritual purpose. Archaeological evidence links the Nazca culture to complex ceremonies involving water and fertility, vital concerns in one of the driest places on Earth. The straight lines and trapezoids may have functioned as processional pathways, routes walked by worshippers in acts of devotion or supplication to the gods. The animal figures, many associated with fertility, rain, or myth, could have been offerings on a grand scale, their immensity meant to appeal to divine forces watching from above. Yet even within these interpretations, mysteries linger. If the lines were meant as offerings to the gods, why create images so vast that their full forms were invisible to those who made them? Were they meant not for human eyes at all, but for beings or powers believed to dwell in the sky? This question has given rise to more speculative theories. Some suggest that the Nazca Lines were markers for ceremonial sites or pilgrimage routes connecting sacred places across the desert. Others wonder if they may have served as maps or territorial markers, asserting the presence and power of the Nazca people. And then there are the more fringe ideas. Because the figures can only be truly appreciated from the air, some have speculated that they were created as signals, messages meant to be seen from above. Could they have been intended for the gods themselves, or perhaps for something more enigmatic still? While such theories reach beyond the bounds of mainstream archaeology, they reflect the awe these lines continue to inspire. What is certain is the extraordinary effort involved. Some of the geoglyphs stretch nearly 1,200 feet across, and their creation required coordination, planning, and knowledge of geometry on a remarkable scale. Wooden stakes found in the desert show that the Nazca people used simple tools to lay out these immense figures with surprising precision. Yet the question lingers. What compelled them to dedicate such immense resources to these works of art and ritual carved into the earth itself? The desert itself seems to conspire with the mystery. Standing among the lines, the heat shimmers, and the world feels disorienting, flat yet endless, silent except for the wind. From this perspective, the lines are little more than shallow furrows in the soil. But in the mind's eye, the images unfold into vast designs, calling to something larger than human scale. Today, the Nazca Lines remain both fragile and enduring. Protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, they continue to draw scholars, travelers, and seekers of mystery from around the world. Yet their true purpose resists final explanation. Were they calendars, prayers, offerings, or messages? Were they rooted in the practical need to secure water in a desert land, or in the spiritual yearning to connect with forces beyond human reach? Perhaps the answer lies not in a single explanation, but in a combination of them. Rituals intertwined with astronomy, offerings linked to agriculture, practical needs blended with cosmic belief. The Nazca people may not have separated the sacred from the scientific as modern thought so often does. To them, the lines may have been both practical and divine, both earthly and celestial. And still, questions remain. Why certain animals and not others? Why spirals, trapezoids, and lines stretching into infinity? What messages did the Nazca inscribe into the desert floor, and who, in the end, were they meant for? The desert holds its silence. The lines remain, stretching endlessly beneath the sun, their meaning hidden just beyond our grasp. And we are left to wonder, what secrets are still etched into the earth, waiting for us to understand the vision of those who carved their prayers into the very bones of the land? High in the windswept plains of the Bolivian Andes, not far from the shores of Lake Titicaca, lie the ruins of Puma Punku. At first glance, the site appears to be little more than scattered blocks of stone, weathered, broken, and strewn across the earth. Yet a closer look reveals something astonishing. Massive slabs of red sandstone, some weighing over 100 tons, rest alongside finely carved blocks of andesite, shaped with a precision that seems almost out of place in the pre-Columbian world. Their surfaces are smooth, their edges sharp, and their cuts so exact that even today, blades of grass or a thin piece of paper cannot easily fit between them. Puma Punku forms part of the larger Tiwanaku complex, a ceremonial and political center that flourished around 500 to 1000 AD. The Tiwanaku civilization left behind remarkable evidence of their skill: monolithic statues, sunken courtyards, and intricate stone gateways. But among these achievements, Puma Punku stands apart, both for its monumental scale and for the extraordinary craftsmanship of its stonework. Walking through the site, one encounters the famous H blocks, rectangular andesite stones carved into uniform, modular shapes. Each bears intricate right angles, precise grooves, and interlocking features, as if designed to fit together like pieces of a vast three-dimensional puzzle. How, many wonder, could a society without iron tools, without the wheel, and without written language achieve such feats of engineering? Mainstream archaeology suggests practical answers. The Tiwanaku people likely used hammer stones made of harder material to shape the andesite, and copper tools to refine the details. Sand and abrasive techniques may have smoothed the surfaces. Wooden sledges, ropes, and ramps could have been employed to move the massive blocks, while human labor, organized on a grand scale, provided the strength. Experimental archaeology has shown that with determination and time, similar results can be achieved using pre-industrial methods. Yet even within this framework, the site raises perplexing questions. Some of the stones at Puma Punku weigh more than 100 tons and were quarried miles away from the site. Transporting them across uneven terrain without wheels or draft animals would have been an enormous challenge. How were such immense stones moved? With what kind of organization, and over what period of time? And what was the ultimate purpose of this megalithic platform that seems never to have been completed? For some, the precision of the stonework pushes the boundaries of conventional explanation. The crispness of the cuts, the uniformity of the angles, and the apparent modularity of the blocks suggest techniques that appear strikingly advanced. Could the Tiwanaku have developed methods of stone cutting that are now lost to history? Or were they working with tools and knowledge that archaeology has not yet uncovered? These questions have inspired more speculative theories. Some suggest that Puma Punku reflects an understanding of geometry and engineering far beyond what is typically attributed to ancient Andean cultures. The idea that the H-blocks were designed as part of a large interlocking structure has led to speculation about architectural sophistication we can scarcely imagine. Others reach further still, proposing that the site bears evidence of lost civilizations, or of knowledge passed down from earlier cultures that disappeared without a trace. In some of the more fringe perspectives, Puma Punku is seen as proof of contact with beings beyond Earth, with the precision of its stonework cited as evidence of technologies unavailable to pre-Columbian societies. While such claims remain outside the mainstream, they illustrate the profound sense of wonder that Puma Punku continues to inspire. Archaeological evidence does show that Tiwanaku was a center of ritual life, agriculture, and trade, influencing vast regions of the Andes. The monumental scale of Puma Punku may have been intended to reflect cosmological beliefs, connecting the earthly realm with the heavens above. Its design could have symbolized creation myths, or served as a stage for ceremonies tied to the agricultural cycle. In this view, the stonework was not just about engineering, but about meaning, about embodying beliefs in stone. And yet, the sense of unfinished mystery remains. Excavations suggest that Puma Punku was never fully completed, its stones left scattered by time, earthquakes, and centuries of neglect. Perhaps what we see today is only a fraction of what was intended, the outline of a vision lost to history. Standing among the ruins, the imagination runs wild. The cold wind sweeps across the plateau, carrying with it the silence of centuries. The scattered blocks seem less like ruins and more like fragments of a puzzle, pieces of a grand design that we no longer understand. Were they the foundation of a temple, a platform for rituals, or something more enigmatic still? Even now, scholars debate its mysteries. The Tiwanaku left no written records, no chronicles to explain their methods or intentions. All that remains is the stone, cut, shaped and placed with an artistry that seems to transcend the passage of time. Puma Punku is both a monument and a riddle, a place where the line between history and mystery blurs. It challenges us to ask questions that may never be fully answered. How did a people with simple tools create such perfection? What vision drove them to undertake such a monumental task? And what knowledge, practical, spiritual, or otherwise, did they possess that has since slipped into oblivion? The stones remain, weathered but enduring, as though guarding a secret too vast to be revealed. And perhaps that is the true power of Puma Punku, that it compels us to wonder, to imagine, and to acknowledge the possibility that the past may still hold truths we have yet to uncover. Across the rolling plains of Salisbury, in southern England, a circle of towering stones rises out of the grass like a frozen echo of some forgotten age. In the early morning mist, Stonehenge seems less a monument of stone and more a vision, its gray pillars standing solemn against the horizon, their surfaces weathered by thousands of years of wind and rain. It is one of the most iconic and enigmatic landmarks on Earth, and yet its true purpose remains hidden behind layers of speculation, legend, and unanswered questions. Archaeologists believe that the first stages of Stonehenge's construction began around 3000 BC, evolving over centuries into the arrangement we see today. Massive sarsen stones, some weighing up to 25 tons, were dragged across the landscape, while smaller bluestones, traced to quarries in Wales, more than 150 miles away, were somehow transported over hills, rivers, and valleys to this remote site. How such feats of movement and engineering were accomplished without wheels or modern machinery remains a subject of debate. But the real mystery lies not only in how Stonehenge was built, but why. The arrangement of the stones suggests careful intention. The outer circle, the inner horseshoe, and the lintels balanced upon vertical pillars all hint at a design imbued with meaning. The most widely accepted interpretation is that Stonehenge served as a kind of calendar aligned with the movements of the sun. On the summer solstice, the rising sun shines directly into the heart of the monument, illuminating its axis in perfect harmony with the season. Likewise, the winter solstice sunset aligns with its stones. To many scholars, this suggests that Stonehenge was a place where ancient people tracked the rhythms of the year, marking the changing seasons, perhaps for agricultural purposes or for rituals bound to the cycles of light and darkness. But was Stonehenge only a calendar, or was it something more? The site bears evidence of burials, leading some to propose it was also a sacred resting ground for the dead. Cremated remains found within the site date back to its earliest phases, suggesting that Stonehenge may have been both a temple to the heavens and a necropolis for ancestors. Could it have been a place where the living gathered to honor the dead, while also observing the skies above? Theories abound. Some scholars argue that Stonehenge was a center of healing, a prehistoric pilgrimage site where people sought cures for ailments and injuries. The blue stones, carried from Wales, were believed in folklore to hold special properties, perhaps even mystical powers. Were they chosen not just for their availability, but for their symbolic or spiritual significance? Others look at the broader landscape surrounding Stonehenge. Nearby monuments, such as Durrington Walls and Woodhenge, suggest a vast ceremonial complex connected by pathways and rivers. Stonehenge may have been but one part of a much larger ritual landscape, a focal point in a network of sacred sites. Could it have been a stage for rituals that united the living and the dead, the earth and the sky? And then there are the more speculative interpretations. Some suggest that Stonehenge's precise geometry and astronomical alignments point to knowledge far beyond what we might expect from Neolithic farmers. Was this site a repository of ancient wisdom, inherited from a forgotten culture? Others propose connections to distant lands and civilizations, suggesting a level of shared knowledge or contact that mainstream history does not record. More fringe theories even speculate that the monument could have been built with the guidance of beings not of this world, though such ideas remain well outside the scope of conventional archaeology. Even within the framework of accepted scholarship, the questions multiply. Why invest such extraordinary effort, moving stones across hundreds of miles when smaller local materials could have sufficed? What kind of social structure could command and organize such labor? And what belief was powerful enough to drive generations to build, rebuild, and reshape this monument over centuries? The mystery of Stonehenge deepens when we consider what is missing. Unlike civilizations that left written records, the builders of Stonehenge left us only their stones. No texts explain its meaning, no carvings tell its story. All we have are the alignments, the burials, and the silent weight of stone, inviting us to interpret, to wonder, and perhaps to project our own questions onto its ancient form. Standing within the circle today, one feels the weight of time pressing down. The stones rise above like sentinels, their silence more eloquent than words. As the light of dawn or dusk filters between them, it is easy to sense the awe they must have inspired in those who first gathered here, thousands of years ago. Was Stonehenge a temple, a calendar, a cemetery, or something else entirely? Perhaps it was all of these at once, a place where sky and earth met, where the living and the dead connected, where cycles of time were marked in stone. Or perhaps it was something we can no longer imagine, a purpose lost in the long corridors of history. What is certain is that the monument still speaks, though in whispers. It invites us to stand among its stones, to look to the horizon, and to feel, however faintly, the connection to those who came before us. And as we search for answers, one question lingers in the air. What secrets does Stonehenge still keep, hidden within its timeless circle of stone? High above the desert floor of the American Southwest, sheer sandstone cliffs rise against the horizon, glowing red beneath the fading sun. Nestled within their alcoves are dwellings of stone and adobe, silent, haunting, and abandoned. These are the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon, remnants of the Ancestral Puebloans, a people who built thriving communities across what is now Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. Their homes, carved into the rock, seem almost suspended between earth and sky, hidden sanctuaries of a civilization that, for centuries, flourished in one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth. The Ancestral Puebloans, often historically referred to as the Anasazi, constructed some of the most sophisticated architecture in pre-Columbian North America. Multi-story complexes with hundreds of rooms, ceremonial chambers known as kivas, and intricate road systems stretching across miles of desert testify to their engineering brilliance and social organization. At Chaco Canyon, great houses such as Pueblo Bonito contained more than 600 rooms, carefully aligned with astronomical events like the solstices and equinoxes. Here, architecture and the cosmos intertwined, suggesting that for these people, life was deeply tied to the rhythms of the heavens. For centuries, this civilization flourished. They farmed maize, beans, and squash in an arid landscape, mastering irrigation techniques and dry farming methods. They traded turquoise, pottery, and exotic goods across vast networks reaching into Mesoamerica. Their culture left behind exquisite art, ceramics, and petroglyphs that still adorn the canyon walls. Yet sometime around the late 13th century A.D., something changed. The grand cities were gradually abandoned, cliff dwellings were left empty, and the people who had built them seemed to vanish from the landscape. What happened to the Ancestral Puebloans? The most widely accepted explanation lies in the environment itself. Studies of tree rings reveal that a series of prolonged droughts struck the region during the 12th and 13th centuries. Without consistent rainfall, agriculture would have faltered, leaving once thriving communities vulnerable to hunger and instability. The desert, unforgiving in its extremes, may have forced the people to move elsewhere in search of water and fertile land. But drought alone does not fully explain the scale of the abandonment. Archaeological evidence points to other pressures: overpopulation, deforestation, and soil depletion, all of which may have compounded environmental stress. The growing demands of large urban centers could have exhausted the land that sustained them. Conflict, too, appears in the archaeological record. Some sites show signs of fortification, mass burials, and evidence of violence, suggesting that competition over scarce resources may have turned once unified communities against each other. Still, questions linger. If the ancestral Puebloans left because of drought and conflict, where did they go? Oral traditions from modern Pueblo peoples, such as the Hopi, Zuni, and Rio Grande communities, speak of ancestral migrations, of clans dispersing to new homelands guided by spiritual visions and sacred obligations. These living descendants maintain that their ancestors did not disappear, but rather transformed their society, leaving behind the old centers and moving into new regions where they continue to live today. From this perspective, the mystery of disappearance may be less about vanishing and more about adaptation and continuity. Yet, the archaeological silence in the great houses and cliff dwellings remains striking. Why abandon such monumental structures, painstakingly built over centuries? Could there have been deeper cultural or religious reasons, shifts in belief systems that compelled entire communities to move? Some researchers propose that a combination of drought, famine, and social upheaval led to the collapse of centralized authority in places like Chaco Canyon, forcing people to scatter into smaller, more sustainable groups. More speculative theories reach beyond environmental and social explanations. Some suggest that astronomical alignments in the great houses and petroglyphs may point to celestial events, such as eclipses or supernovae, that profoundly affected cultural worldviews, prompting a spiritual migration. Others go further, imagining lost knowledge or external influences that we cannot yet trace in the archaeological record. Even today, the silence of the cliff dwellings seems to invite mystery. Standing in the shadow of a kiva, or peering through the narrow doorways of a stone room, one cannot help but wonder, why here? And why did they leave? Did whole families walk away in a single generation, or was the abandonment gradual, stretching over decades? Was it desperation, faith, or perhaps a vision of renewal that guided their steps? The story of the ancestral Puebloans is a reminder of the fragility of civilizations. Great houses rose from the desert, flourished for centuries, and then fell quiet, leaving only echoes in stone. The desert reclaimed what human hands had built, but the questions remain. Were the cliff dwellings a final refuge, a last attempt to cling to a way of life under siege by famine and conflict? Or were they always meant to be temporary, way stations on a longer spiritual journey, their emptiness today not a sign of collapse, but of transformation? The truth may lie in the interplay of all these factors: environment, conflict, migration, belief, woven together into a story too complex for easy answers. What remains certain is that the legacy of the ancestral Puebloans endures, carried forward by their descendants, and etched into the stone walls of the canyons they once called home. And yet, as we walk through the silent ruins, we are left to ask, what unseen forces compelled thousands to abandon their great cities? And what knowledge, written only in the stars and the stones, may still lie hidden, waiting to be understood? Along the sunlit shores of southern Spain, where the Guadalquivir River winds toward the Atlantic, the land carries whispers of a forgotten past. Today, it is a place of salt marshes, fertile fields, and scattered ruins. But more than 2,000 years ago, this region was home to a civilization that dazzled the ancient world with its wealth, its artistry, and its mystery. The Greeks called it Tartessos, a kingdom of immense riches, famed for its gold, silver, and trade. Yet, despite its renown in antiquity, Tartessos vanished from history almost as suddenly as it appeared, leaving behind questions that still puzzle historians and archaeologists. The first mentions of Tartessos appear in Greek sources from around the 8th century BC. To them, Tartessos was both a river and a land, a distant realm on the far western edge of the known world. Herodotus spoke of it as a flourishing kingdom ruled by a wealthy monarch named Argentonius, who reigned for 80 years. Strabo and other classical writers described a land rich in metals, where silver was so abundant it was said to overflow from the ground. The Phoenicians, master traders of the Mediterranean, established colonies nearby, drawn by the wealth of Tartessos. The kingdom became a hub of exchange, connecting the cultures of the Mediterranean with those of the Atlantic. Archaeological discoveries hint at the sophistication of this enigmatic society. Intricate gold jewelry, ornate silver vessels, and finely crafted ceramics suggest both artistic refinement and access to extraordinary resources. Burials reveal a culture that combined local traditions with influences from the eastern Mediterranean. The people of Tartessos were not isolated. They were part of a vibrant web of cultural exchange stretching across the ancient world. Yet, for all its wealth and apparent prominence, Tartessos disappears from the historical record after the 6th century BC. The once famous kingdom is mentioned no more, as though it had simply melted into the earth. What could have happened to such a thriving civilization? Some scholars suggest that Tartessos collapsed under the weight of shifting trade routes. As Phoenician and later Carthaginian power grew, Tartessos may have been sidelined, its influence diminished. Others point to conflict. Carthage, seeking dominance over Iberian trade, may have conquered or absorbed the kingdom, erasing its name from history. Environmental factors, too, are considered. Floods from the Guadalquivir, silting of harbors, or shifts in climate that made the region less habitable. Yet, as with many ancient mysteries, the lack of clear evidence leaves space for speculation. Some researchers have drawn connections between Tartessos and myths of the West. Could this forgotten kingdom have been one of the inspirations for Plato's tale of Atlantis? Both are described as wealthy civilizations that suddenly vanished. Both are said to lie beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar. While most scholars caution against equating myth with history, the parallels invite curiosity. Excavations in recent decades have brought the mystery into sharper focus, but not closer to resolution. Sites such as Cancho Roano and Casas del Turuñuelo reveal monumental architecture, altars, and evidence of ritual practices. These suggest that Tartessos was not merely a land of wealth, but also of complex religion and ceremony. Strikingly, some of these sites appear to have been deliberately burned and sealed by their own inhabitants. Why would a people destroy their own temples at the height of their power? Was it an act of devotion, a ritual of closure, or a desperate attempt to conceal something from invaders? Other theories push the mystery further. Some propose that Tartessos did not vanish at all, but transformed, its people evolving into later Iberian cultures, their identity preserved under different names. Others suggest that the kingdom was never a single unified state, but a loose network of tribes whose decline was gradual, leaving no dramatic trace of collapse. Still, the aura of the unknown lingers. Ancient texts describe Tartessos in tones of wonder, as a place of abundance at the edges of the world. To Greek and Phoenician travelers, it was the gateway to the Atlantic, a frontier between the familiar Mediterranean and the great unknown ocean beyond. Perhaps its mystery lies not only in its disappearance, but also in its liminal place between worlds. Standing today by the Guadalquivir, one sees only the quiet flow of water, the marshes alive with birds, and the distant hum of modern towns, No gleaming temples or walls of silver rise from the soil. And yet, beneath the earth, archaeologists continue to uncover fragments, ornaments, weapons, remnants of buildings that hint at a story still waiting to be told. Was Tartessos a mighty kingdom undone by the tides of history? Was it a constellation of peoples whose legacy lived on in hidden ways? Or was it something more, a place so intertwined with myth that it now lingers half in memory, half in imagination? The riddle of Tartessos endures, suspended between history and legend. Its wealth dazzled the ancient world, its silence perplexes us still. And so we are left to wonder what lies buried beneath the fields and rivers of southern Spain, waiting to reveal the truth of a civilization that disappeared into the shadows of time. In the rolling landscapes of central Italy, where vineyards stretch beneath the Tuscan sun and ancient hilltop towns cling to the ridges, lie the silent remnants of a people whose identity still eludes us. Stone tombs carved into cliffs, painted chambers adorned with banquets and dancers, bronze mirrors etched with enigmatic figures. These are the traces of the Etruscans, a civilization that thrived centuries before the rise of Rome. Their art is vivid, their architecture imposing, and their influence undeniable. Yet the question persists: who were they, and where did they come from? By the early first millennium BC, the Etruscans had already established themselves as one of the most sophisticated societies of the ancient Mediterranean. They built powerful city-states such as Tarquinia, Cerveteri, and Veii, each adorned with monumental tombs and temples. They mined and traded metals, producing exquisite jewelry, finely wrought bronze, and elaborate pottery that traveled far beyond their homeland. To the Greeks, they were the Tyrrhenians. To the Romans, the Etrusci or Tusci. And yet, for all their presence in the records of others, their own beginnings remain clouded in mystery. Ancient authors themselves were puzzled by the Etruscans' origins. Herodotus, the great Greek historian, claimed they had come from Lydia in western Anatolia, driven by famine to cross the sea and settle in Italy. Dionysius of Halicarnassus, however, insisted they were indigenous, a people who had always lived in the land they later dominated. Others suggested links to the Aegean, to the islands of Lemnos or Crete, pointing to similarities in language and ritual. Competing accounts, conflicting traditions. Already in antiquity, the question of the Etruscans' origin had no clear answer. Modern archaeology has offered clues, but not certainty. The material culture of early Etruria shows both continuity with the Villanovan culture that preceded it and sudden influences from the Eastern Mediterranean. Pottery styles, religious motifs, and burial practices bear the marks of contact with Greek and Near Eastern societies. But are these signs of migration, or simply of trade and cultural exchange? Then there is the matter of language. The Etruscans left behind inscriptions, hundreds of them, scratched into tombs, bronzes, and stone. But their language is unlike that of their neighbors. It is not Indo-European, and while we can read the alphabet, the meaning of much of their vocabulary remains obscure. Words for family, ritual, and the afterlife survive, but entire sentences remain frustratingly opaque. Language, which so often ties a people to their wider family of nations, here only deepens the enigma. Were the Etruscans isolated survivors of a forgotten linguistic past? Or did they bring their tongue with them from a distant homeland? Genetic studies, too, complicate the picture. Some findings suggest continuity with ancient Italic populations, while others point to traces of connections with Anatolia or the Near East. Still, none of the evidence is conclusive. Each layer of research adds new dimensions but stops short of solving the riddle. The fascination with the Etruscans also lies in their remarkable achievements. They drained marshes, developed advanced metalworking techniques, and constructed imposing walls and roads. They pioneered religious practices, divination, augury, and rituals for interpreting the will of the gods that would later be adopted by Rome. Even the Roman alphabet itself was shaped by their hand, adapted from the Greek through Etruscan mediation. And yet, despite their profound impact, the Etruscans remained strangely apart, their identity never fully absorbed into the cultures around them until Rome finally subsumed their cities. Speculative theories abound. Some suggest they were survivors of a lost Aegean culture, perhaps displaced after the upheavals of the Late Bronze Age. Others wonder if they represent a cultural fusion, a meeting point between local Italic peoples and seafarers from the eastern Mediterranean. More adventurous voices even link them to mythic migrations, tying their story to legendary wanderers who carried with them forgotten traditions and sacred rites. Archaeologists continue to uncover tombs that shed light on their world, but the discoveries also raise further questions. Scenes of banquets painted on tomb walls depict men and women reclining together, a striking departure from Greek customs, hinting at a society with its own distinct values. Funerary goods show not only wealth, but a deep concern with the afterlife. What beliefs lay behind these rituals? What stories were told in the flickering light of Etruscan temples, now lost to time? Even their decline is shrouded in ambiguity. By the 4th century BC, their cities had begun to wane under pressure from expanding neighbors, the Celts from the north and Rome from the south. Gradually, their political independence was erased, their culture absorbed into the growing Roman Republic. And yet, their influence endured. The Romans inherited their engineering, their religious systems, even their symbols of power. Rome itself, in many ways, carried Etruscan traditions forward, even as the name of the people faded into obscurity. Standing in the necropolises of Tarquinia or Cerveteri today, one feels both presence and absence. The painted walls still glow with color. The carved sarcophagi still bear the faces of the departed, but the voices are silent. Who were these people who left so much, yet revealed so little? Were they children of the Italian soil, shaped by trade and exchange? Or were they distant voyagers, carrying with them an inheritance from across the sea? The Etruscans left us fragments, objects, inscriptions, monuments, that tantalize but never explain. Their story remains suspended between history and myth, between what we can prove and what we can only imagine. Perhaps that is why they continue to captivate us, because in their mystery, they remind us how much of the human past lies beyond reach, still hidden in the shadows of time. And so, the question lingers, as it has for centuries. When we gaze upon the painted tombs and bronze mirrors of Etruria, are we looking at a people of Italy, or at strangers who carried with them the memory of another, forgotten world? The island of Santorini, known in antiquity as Thera, rises like a broken ring from the deep blue waters of the Aegean Sea. Its crescent-shaped cliffs tower above the waves, their volcanic layers a silent chronicle of fire and fury. At sunset, the land glows with an otherworldly light, but beneath its beauty lies a cataclysm that changed the course of history. More than 3,000 years ago, this island was the stage of one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in human memory, an event so devastating that it may have brought an end to the great Minoan civilization of Crete. The Minoans, flourishing from roughly 2000 to 1450 BC, were among the most advanced cultures of the Bronze Age. Centered on Crete, their palaces, most famously at Knossos, were marvels of architecture, adorned with vivid frescoes of dolphins, dancers, and rituals whose meanings we still struggle to decode. Their navy dominated the Aegean, their merchants traded across the eastern Mediterranean, and their art reflected a society both prosperous and refined. To many, they seemed almost a civilization apart, thriving in peace while their contemporaries were often consumed by war. But then came the eruption of Thera, around the mid-2nd millennium BC. Modern geologists rank it among the most violent volcanic events of the ancient world, rivaling Krakatoa or Tambora in scale. The explosion ripped apart the island, sending plumes of ash high into the atmosphere, creating tsunamis that swept across the sea and cloaking much of the eastern Mediterranean in darkness. For the Minoans, only 60 miles south on Crete, the disaster must have been apocalyptic. Archaeological excavations at Akrotiri, a city on Thera buried under volcanic ash, provide a haunting snapshot. Streets, houses, and frescoes have been preserved as if time stood still, much like Pompeii centuries later. No bodies were found, suggesting that the inhabitants fled before the eruption, but their world was obliterated nonetheless. Ash deposits across Crete and beyond testify to the scale of the disaster. Crops failed, harbors were destroyed, and life as they had known it was thrown into chaos. Yet the mystery is not only the eruption itself, but the role it played in the sudden decline of the Minoans. Was the Thera eruption the single decisive blow? Or merely one element in a chain of disasters that toppled this remarkable civilization? Mainstream explanations often emphasize the environmental impact. The ash cloud may have darkened skies for years, reducing harvests and weakening the Minoan economy. Tsunamis may have smashed fleets and coastal settlements, undermining their naval dominance. Weakened and destabilized, the Minoans could no longer resist the rising power of the Mycenaeans from mainland Greece, who eventually absorbed their territories. But this straightforward sequence of cause and effect leaves questions unanswered. The Minoan palaces on Crete did not fall immediately after the eruption. Some continued to function for decades. Could a single eruption explain such a gradual decline? Or was something more complex at work? Some scholars propose a combination of factors: earthquakes, fires, and political instability, perhaps triggered or worsened by the eruption. Others suggest that the Mycenaean conquest was not merely opportunistic, but may have been underway even before Thera erupted, the disaster serving to tip the balance. Beyond the realm of archaeology, speculation has given rise to more enigmatic theories. Some believe the story of the Thera eruption was preserved in myth, becoming the inspiration for Plato's tale of Atlantis, a powerful civilization destroyed in a single day and night of catastrophe. The parallels are striking. An advanced maritime society, wealthy and influential, suddenly consumed by nature's fury. Could the legend of Atlantis be a distant echo of the Minoans' fate? Other theories push further into the symbolic. The Minoans' art, rich with themes of nature, animals, and ritual, suggests a deep connection to the cycles of the earth. Could the eruption have shattered not only their physical world, but their spiritual one as well? If their gods had failed to protect them, if their rituals could not prevent devastation, perhaps their faith, and by extension their social order, collapsed along with their cities. And what of the human dimension? Imagine standing on the shores of Crete, watching as the horizon darkens with ash, as waves rise higher than temples, as the air fills with choking fumes. For those who survived, how could life ever return to normal? Trauma, famine, displacement, these are not just environmental consequences, but psychological ones, scars on the collective memory of a people. Still, the evidence resists neat conclusions. Some archaeologists argue that the eruption's timing does not perfectly align with the decline of Minoan society, pointing to gaps in dating methods. Could it be that the eruption, though catastrophic, did not directly end the Minoans at all? Might we be misinterpreting cause and effect, attributing too much to a single disaster while overlooking slower, more subtle forces of change? Today, the ruins of Knossos and Phaistos stand as silent witnesses. Frescoes still show graceful figures leaping over bulls, as if celebrating life in defiance of death. The legacy of the Minoans survived in myths, in symbols, in cultural threads woven into the fabric of later Greek civilization. Yet the full story of their fall remains beyond our grasp. As we gaze across the caldera of Santorini, its cliffs streaked with layers of ancient ash, we are left with a profound sense of awe. Did this island's eruption truly topple one of history's first great civilizations? Or did it merely serve as the spark in a tinderbox of pressures already building? The question endures, suspended between history and legend. And as long as the winds sweep over the Aegean, carrying whispers from the sea, we may wonder how much of the Minoans' story lies buried still, waiting to be unearthed beneath the volcanic ash of time. Off the eastern shores of Pohnpei, a lush island in Micronesia, lies a place that seems to defy both geography and time. Rising from the shallow waters of a lagoon are the remnants of Nan Madol, a labyrinth of crumbling basalt walls, canals, and platforms often referred to as the Venice of the Pacific. At low tide, the ruins reveal towering stone structures, their foundations rooted in coral reefs, their passageways laced with water channels that once connected palaces, temples, and tombs. Yet, for all its grandeur, Nan Madol raises more questions than it answers. Who built this monumental city in the sea? And how did they manage to move the enormous stone blocks, some weighing as much as 50 tons, across the island and into the lagoon? Archaeologists date the construction of Nan Madol to around the 8th or 9th century AD, with its peak flourishing under the Saudeleur dynasty between the 13th and 17th centuries. This ruling lineage established Nan Madol as a political and religious center, separating themselves from the rest of the population through both physical barriers and symbolic power. The site spans nearly 100 artificial islets, linked by tidal canals, and the stones used to build its walls and platforms came from quarries miles away. But here lies the enduring mystery. Without metal tools, without draft animals, and without wheels, how did the builders transport and precisely position such massive columns of basalt? The basalt itself is columnar, naturally forming into hexagonal shapes as it cools, yet cutting, stacking, and balancing them into walls as high as 25 feet. Required engineering far beyond what conventional accounts suggest for an island society of that era. Some scholars propose practical explanations. They suggest that rafts, rollers, and coordinated manpower could have transported the stones. Others argue that buoyancy and tidal engineering may have played a role, with stones floated into place on large canoes or bamboo pontoons. Yet these ideas remain speculative, as no direct evidence of the methods has ever been found. Local legends, meanwhile, provide a very different perspective. Oral traditions speak of two brothers, sorcerers, who flew the stones to the site using magical powers. In some accounts, they hailed from a faraway land and brought with them both the knowledge and the authority to command such a feat. These stories, dismissed by some as myth, nevertheless echo the awe that even the descendants of Nan Madol's rulers felt toward the city's construction. Could these legends preserve fragments of truth, distorted over generations? Did the builders possess a technology or a system of knowledge now lost to us? Or does the myth simply capture the astonishment of later storytellers confronted with ruins they could not explain? The very design of Nan Madol adds to the enigma. Unlike most Pacific settlements, which were built inland or along accessible shorelines, this city was deliberately constructed atop a reef, isolated by water. Why? Some believe it served a defensive purpose, protecting rulers from rivals on the main island. Others argue it had ceremonial significance, separating the divine rulers from the common people. The watery canals may have symbolized a connection between life and death, or between the human and the divine. Excavations at Nan Madol have uncovered burial sites, including what is thought to be the tomb of the first Saudeleur ruler, surrounded by imposing walls. Archaeologists have also found evidence of ritual activity, suggesting that Nan Madol may have been not only a political capital, but a sacred center, a place where rulers drew legitimacy from their proximity to the gods. And yet, the city was eventually abandoned. By the 17th century, the Saudeleur dynasty collapsed, remembered in local tradition as oppressive rulers who fell to rebellion and external pressure. Afterward, Nan Madol became a place of taboo, a haunted ruin avoided by the island's inhabitants. Even today, some Pohnpeians view it with unease, believing that spirits linger among its dark stones. This lingering atmosphere of dread, combined with the engineering puzzle of its construction, has fueled speculative theories far beyond the Pacific. Some have drawn connections between Nan Madol and other megalithic sites across the world, Easter Island, Stonehenge, or even the pyramids of Egypt. Could there have been a shared tradition of ancient engineering, now forgotten? Were the builders of Nan Madol connected, directly or indirectly, to a wider network of prehistoric knowledge? Fringe theories push even further, suggesting extraterrestrial influence or lost civilizations like Atlantis. While mainstream archaeology rejects these ideas, their very persistence reflects the aura of mystery surrounding the site. Nan Madol feels out of place, an anomaly in both scale and design, an echo of something greater than what we think we know about the Pacific world. And so the questions remain. Did human ingenuity, persistence, and cooperation alone account for this marvel? Or was there some other factor, cultural, technological, or even environmental, that we have yet to uncover? Why choose to build an immense city on water against nature's obstacles, rather than inland where construction would have been easier? And what knowledge allowed the builders to handle stones so massive, so precise, with methods invisible to us today? As the tide rises around the ruins and the basalt walls seem to float on the shimmering lagoon, Nan Madol stands as both a triumph and a riddle. It whispers of power, ambition, and vision, yet conceals the details of how that vision was realized. Perhaps the mystery lies not only in the stones themselves, but in the silence of the people who built them, a silence unbroken across centuries, a silence that leaves us wondering. For now, Nan Madol remains both a monument and an unanswered question. A city in the sea whose builders are as shadowy as the spirit said to wander its walls. And as we gaze upon its dark stone outlines fading into the Pacific dusk, we cannot help but ask, what secrets of human history are still hidden beneath the tides waiting for us to uncover them? Far out in the Pacific Ocean, more than 2,000 miles from the nearest continent, lies one of the most isolated places on Earth, Easter Island, or Rapa Nui. The windswept landscape, dotted with the enigmatic Moai statues, is already steeped in mystery. Yet, among the island's many puzzles, there exists one that is perhaps even more elusive than the towering stone figures, the mysterious wooden tablets carved with symbols known as Rongorongo. These tablets, small enough to be carried in the hands, are covered in lines of intricate glyphs. Figures resembling birds, fish, plants, human forms, and geometric patterns march across their surfaces in orderly rows. They are carved with such care and regularity that they cannot be dismissed as mere decoration. To gaze upon them is to feel the presence of meaning just beyond reach, as if the voices of a lost culture are locked within the wood, waiting to be deciphered. But what exactly is Rongorongo? The script first came to European attention in the 19th century, when missionaries and explorers arrived on Rapa Nui. By then, much of the island's traditional culture had already been devastated through disease, slave raids, and forced conversions. Local knowledge of Rongorongo was fragmentary, and those who might have once understood it had either perished or no longer practiced its use. The wooden tablets were collected and carried away to museums and private collections around the world, leaving behind only questions. If the glyphs represent a true writing system, Rongorongo would be one of the very few scripts independently invented in human history. Most known writing systems, whether cuneiform in Mesopotamia, hieroglyphs in Egypt, or the scripts of China, can be traced to long traditions of development and influence. But on a small, remote island in the middle of the Pacific, how could such a system emerge seemingly in isolation? Some scholars suggest that Rongorongo may not be a full writing system, but rather a form of proto-writing, a mnemonic device used to aid in the recitation of oral traditions. Others argue that the density and variety of the glyphs point to something more complex, a true script capable of recording speech. Attempts to decode it have produced tantalizing hints. Certain symbols recur in sequences that suggest syntax or grammar, and some researchers believe the texts may contain genealogies, ritual chants, or even calendars tied to the cycles of the moon and stars. And yet, despite decades of study, no one has succeeded in unlocking its meaning. The lack of a Rosetta Stone, a parallel text in a known language, leaves researchers adrift. The Rapa Nui language survives, but attempts to match it with the glyphs have led to inconclusive results. Some even argue that the knowledge of how to read Rongorongo was deliberately restricted to a priestly or elite class, meaning that its loss was swift and nearly total once the social fabric of the island collapsed. This silence has fueled speculation. Could Rongorongo contain historical records of the island's past? Perhaps even accounts of how the Moai statues were moved and erected? Could it preserve memories of ancient voyages across the Pacific, linking Rapa Nui with faraway islands, or even distant continents? There are those who push the speculation further still. Fringe theories suggest that Rongorongo encodes knowledge brought by outsiders, even visitors from lands across the sea or beyond. While mainstream archaeology finds no evidence to support such claims, the allure of the script lies precisely in its resistance to certainty. Without a key, every possibility seems to remain on the table. The form of the script itself adds to its peculiarity. The glyphs are inscribed in a unique style known as reverse boustrophodon. One line is read left to right, the next right to left, with each line inverted, as if the tablet were turned 180 degrees after each inscription. This method of writing is rare in world history, and it raises further questions. Why was such a system chosen? Was it symbolic, practical, or perhaps tied to ritual significance? Equally intriguing is the material on which Rongorongo was written. The tablets were carved into pieces of wood, many of which show signs of prior use, including driftwood washed ashore. This scarcity of resources reflects the environmental challenges of Rapa Nui, an island long stripped of its forests. If such precious material was dedicated to the script, its contents must have held profound importance, religious, political, or both. Today, only about 24 Rongorongo tablets are known to survive, scattered across museums from Santiago to St. Petersburg. Each fragment is precious, each glyph a silent mark of meaning we can no longer access. For the Rapa Nui people, these tablets are not merely archaeological curiosities but remnants of a heritage disrupted and obscured by colonial contact. The mystery of Rongorongo touches on something universal. Writing is more than communication. It is memory, permanence, the ability to speak across generations. To lose the key to a script is to lose a voice, perhaps forever. The fact that Rongorongo exists at all suggests that the people of Rapa Nui reached for permanence in the face of isolation, encoding their world in a system uniquely their own. But the fact that we cannot read it means that their voice now reaches us only as a whisper. As we stand before the tablets today, behind glass in a quiet museum, the glyphs seem alive, almost moving in the dim light. They seem to ask us questions. Who carved these symbols? What stories did they tell? Were they chants to the gods, records of kings, instructions for rituals, or something we cannot yet imagine? The truth remains locked in silence. Without a breakthrough, Rongorongo will continue to defy interpretation, an enduring reminder of how fragile human knowledge can be, and so the enigma endures. Could the key to Rongorongo still exist, hidden in an overlooked artifact, a forgotten tradition, or a yet untested method of decipherment? Or is the script destined to remain forever closed to us, a voice from the past that time has made unreadable? The answer, like the ocean surrounding Easter Island, remains vast and unknowable. And as the waves crash against its rocky shores, we are left to wonder, what secrets of human history are still inscribed on wood, waiting in silence, waiting for us to listen? In a dimly lit archive, deep within the secure vaults of Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, rests one of the most perplexing and enigmatic books ever discovered. Its pages, aged to a soft yellow, are filled with looping fluid script written in a language that no one on Earth has ever been able to read. Strange plants that do not exist in nature, elaborate astronomical diagrams, and surreal images of women bathing in interconnected pools decorate its margins. This is the Voynich manuscript, a codex that seems to hover in the boundary between knowledge and imagination, science and mystery. Its very presence invites questions. What kind of mind could have created such a work? And more importantly, why? The manuscript first entered the modern world in 1912 when an antiquarian book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich acquired it from a Jesuit library in Italy. From the moment he opened its covers, Voynich knew he had stumbled upon something extraordinary. The book appeared to date from the early 15th century, its vellum pages bound together with care, its ink still clear despite the passing of centuries. Yet the more he studied it, the stranger it became. The text is written in a flowing script now known simply as Voynichese. It looks like language, with recurring words, patterns, and structures suggesting grammar. But no one has ever found a matching tongue. Despite the efforts of cryptographers, linguists, historians, and computer scientists, the script remains unreadable. Even codebreakers who helped unravel the military ciphers of 2 world wars found themselves defeated by its pages. Turning through the manuscript, one encounters sections that appear to follow themes. There is a botanical section, where page after page displays fantastical plants, roots twisted into unnatural shapes, flowers blooming in impossible ways, stems and leaves that bear no resemblance to any known species. Were these meant to be depictions of real flora, or were they symbolic, encoded representations of something else entirely? Next come cosmological and astronomical diagrams, circular patterns filled with stars, suns, moons, and zodiac-like signs. Some pages show concentric circles that look almost like maps of the heavens or diagrams of unseen forces, yet they bear little resemblance to the astronomy practiced in Europe during the 15th century. Could they be allegories of another system of thought, one lost to time? The most puzzling section of all is filled with drawings of nude women, often immersed in greenish-blue pools connected by channels and pipes. Some appear to be engaged in rituals, others in activities that seem medicinal or even alchemical. This imagery has led some scholars to believe the manuscript was a medical or herbal guide, possibly written by or for women. But without knowing the language, such interpretations remain speculation. Carbon dating of the parchment places its creation around the early 1400s, long before Voynich himself discovered it. and chemical analysis of the ink confirms its authenticity as a product of that era. This eliminates the possibility that Voynich forged it himself, though the purpose of the manuscript remains as elusive as ever. Mainstream theories abound. Some suggest it was a compendium of medical knowledge, cloaked in a cipher to keep its secrets from outsiders. Others argue it may have been a form of shorthand or an invented language used within a small circle of scholars. Perhaps it was a teaching tool, meant to pass on knowledge without allowing it to fall into the wrong hands. And yet, other explanations venture into far stranger territory. Could the manuscript be an elaborate hoax, created to deceive a wealthy patron into believing they had acquired rare and esoteric wisdom? If so, it would be one of the most convincing and sustained deceptions in history, requiring extraordinary effort for no obvious gain. There are also whispers of more radical theories. Some suggest that the text might not encode a human language at all, but rather an artificial or alien one. Others wonder if the manuscript is the product of altered states of consciousness, a visual and linguistic record of visions or dreams that defy ordinary reality. In the modern age, advanced techniques such as artificial intelligence and computational linguistics have been applied to the Voynich manuscript. Some studies suggest the script does have the statistical properties of a natural language. Others claim it might be gibberish, a meaningless arrangement of symbols that only gives the illusion of meaning. The results, frustratingly, remain inconclusive, and so the mystery persists. The Voynich manuscript sits behind glass, its pages turned only rarely, its secrets still sealed after more than 500 years. Scholars debate whether we will ever decipher it or whether the knowledge it contains has been permanently lost. As one gazes at the manuscript, the effect is unsettling. Each page seems to beckon, whispering promises of a hidden truth just out of reach. Is it a window into the medical practices of a forgotten culture, a coded manual of alchemy, or a glimpse into a world that exists only in the imagination of its creator? The unanswered questions pile upon one another. Who wrote the manuscript, and for whom? Was it meant to preserve knowledge, or to conceal it? And what secrets might still lie hidden within its undeciphered script, waiting for the right mind to unlock them? Like the enigmatic symbols that flow across its pages, the Voynich manuscript reminds us of how much of human history remains cloaked in shadow, and perhaps somewhere within its lines, there rests a key to a forgotten chapter of our collective past, still waiting, patiently, for discovery. Beneath the gray skies of northern Britain, where mist clings low to the rolling hills and the wind howls across empty moorlands, there lingers a mystery that has haunted historians for centuries. The land is quiet now, dotted with scattered ruins and weathered stone remnants of Rome's once mighty frontier. But here, in this rugged landscape beyond Hadrian's Wall, an entire Roman legion, the 9th Legion Hispana, seems to have vanished from history. Their shields, their banners, their disciplined ranks, all gone, leaving behind little more than silence and speculation. The 9th Legion was no minor force. Composed of around 5,000 well-trained soldiers, it was a cornerstone of Rome's power in Britain. Known for its discipline and resilience, the Legion had served with distinction in campaigns stretching from Spain to the eastern provinces. By the early 2nd century A.D., it was stationed in York, then a key Roman stronghold in northern Britain. And then, the records fall silent. The disappearance of the 9th Legion is one of the most enduring mysteries of the Roman Empire. Ancient documents record their presence in Britain during the reign of Emperor Trajan, but by the mid-2nd century, they are gone, erased from official rosters, their fate never fully explained. What could cause an entire legion, a backbone of Roman military might, to vanish from the historical record? Mainstream historians point first to the volatile conditions in Britain during this period. The northern tribes, fierce and resistant to Roman rule, frequently launched uprisings against their occupiers. Could the Ninth Legion have marched north to suppress a rebellion, only to be ambushed and annihilated? The wild terrain, dense forests, and sudden storms of the region could easily conceal the destruction of even a massive fighting force. Yet if such a disaster occurred, why is there no detailed record of it in Roman sources? The empire was not known for ignoring its defeats. Archaeology provides tantalizing hints, but no certainty. Inscriptions and building stones bearing the Ninth's name have been found in York, proving their presence there at the start of the 2nd century. But after that point, the trail goes cold. Some scholars argue that the legion was not destroyed in Britain at all, but rather transferred elsewhere in the empire. Fragments of evidence suggest the Ninth may have been redeployed to the Rhine frontier, or even to the eastern provinces, where Rome faced constant threats from Parthian forces. But if they were moved, why is there no firm documentation of their service? And why does their name vanish altogether in later records, when other legions continued to be traced for centuries? The mystery deepens when we consider Roman pride and bureaucracy. Rome carefully chronicled the movements of its legions, celebrating their victories and commemorating their losses. The complete absence of the Ninth from subsequent accounts seems deliberate, as though their fate was something the empire preferred not to remember. Was it shame that erased them? Or perhaps secrecy, covering up a catastrophe too devastating or too embarrassing to record? Some speculative theories reach beyond conventional explanations. A few suggest that the Ninth was not lost to battle, but instead absorbed into local populations after desertion or mutiny. Could weary soldiers, far from home and facing unending resistance, have abandoned their posts and disappeared into the northern wilderness? Others propose that the legion was disbanded quietly, its men redistributed into other units to reinforce Rome's strained armies elsewhere. Still, even these possibilities fail to explain why the legion's name itself disappeared so completely from history. The legend of the Ninth has inspired more imaginative tales as well. In the popular imagination, they march north into the mist and are swallowed whole by the land, by the tribes, by forces unknown. Some folkloric traditions in Britain whisper of ghostly Roman soldiers seen wandering the hills, their formations still intact, as if condemned to march forever. While such accounts cannot be proven, they speak to the enduring power of the mystery. What makes the disappearance of the Ninth so compelling is not only the absence of answers, but the silence of the sources. Rome was an empire of records, inscriptions, and commemorations. When entire cities fell, when emperors were assassinated, when disasters struck, Rome remembered. Yet for the Ninth Legion Hispana, there is only a void. Could their story be hidden still, buried beneath the soil of northern Britain or lost in a forgotten scroll in some distant archive? Perhaps an unexcavated battlefield holds the remains of thousands of Roman soldiers, their armor rusted, their weapons shattered, their banners long since rotted away. Or perhaps the answer lies far from Britain, in some corner of the empire where the Ninth met its end in anonymity. For now, the disappearance of the Ninth Legion remains one of the great unsolved enigmas of antiquity. It is a mystery that invites endless questions. Was it rebellion, transfer, erasure, or something far stranger? As the mist drifts once more across the northern moors, one cannot help but wonder, do the bones of Rome's lost legion still lie beneath this silent earth, waiting for discovery? Or has their story already slipped beyond history's reach, into the realm of legend and shadow? In the dimly lit halls of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, among gilded coffins and the carefully wrapped remains of pharaohs, lies a figure that unsettles even the most seasoned visitors. His body is darkened, distorted, his mouth frozen in what looks like an eternal scream. Unlike the serene visages of other mummified royals, he appears tormented, as though death had seized him in violence and pain. Labeled simply as Unknown Man E, he has been called the Burned Mummy, and for over a century, his identity and cause of death have baffled scholars. This mummy's resting place is not just among any group of the dead. He was discovered in 1886 in the royal cache of Deir el-Bahari, a tomb where priests of the 21st dynasty had reburied Egypt's most sacred ancestors to protect them from tomb robbers. Nestled in this hidden chamber were the remains of great rulers: Thutmose III, Seti I, Ramses II, Ramses III. To find an anonymous, disfigured corpse among such figures was unexpected. Who was this man that warranted burial among pharaohs, yet was left unnamed? The body itself raises unsettling questions. Unlike most mummies, whose preservation reflected Egypt's elaborate funerary traditions, Unknown Man E appears to have been hastily prepared or deliberately mistreated. His skin is charred, suggesting exposure to high heat, perhaps fire or resin that combusted. His internal organs, usually removed during mummification, were still inside, decayed and blackened. His wrappings were crude compared to the meticulous bandaging seen in royal burials. And most disturbingly, his face bears an expression unlike any other in the collection. Mouth agape, head tilted back, as if frozen in agony. Why would such a figure be interred among Egypt's greatest rulers, and why in such a condition? Some scholars suggest that the man might have been hastily embalmed after dying suddenly, his body perhaps too decomposed to undergo the traditional rituals. Others propose an accidental fire during the embalming process, where resin and oils ignited, scorching the corpse and leaving it in its current state. Yet these explanations fail to account for the strange burial context. Why preserve so unceremoniously an anonymous figure in the company of kings? One of the most intriguing theories links Unknown Man E to one of ancient Egypt's darkest episodes, the so-called harem conspiracy. Ancient papyri record that, in the final years of Ramses III's reign, a plot was hatched within the royal household. One of his secondary wives sought to place her son on the throne, conspiring with courtiers and officials to assassinate the pharaoh. Ramses III was indeed murdered, his throat cut with a blade. Many of the conspirators were tried and executed. Could Unknown Man E be one of them? Perhaps even the prince at the heart of the plot. Forensic analysis conducted in the late 20th and early 21st centuries deepened the mystery. CT scans revealed that the man was young, likely in his 20s, and of royal lineage. His remains show no clear signs of disease, nor conclusive evidence of a violent death. However, DNA analysis suggested a close relationship to Ramses III, possibly his son. If so, could this be Prince Pentawr, the royal accused in the conspiracy? Ancient records tell us Pentawr was condemned, forced to take his own life, perhaps through hanging or poison. Could the distorted mouth and anguished appearance reflect such a death? Yet doubts remain. The burned and blackened state of the body is inconsistent with simple execution. Was his unusual mummification a deliberate act of punishment, an attempt to deny him a proper afterlife? In Egyptian belief, improper burial could condemn a soul to eternal unrest. Was this prince, if he was indeed Pentawr, not only killed, but also cursed in death? Speculative voices go further, suggesting that Unknown Man E's burial reflects a compromise within the royal household. He could not be honored with full rites, yet nor could he be discarded entirely. Instead, he was placed unnamed among his ancestors, close enough to acknowledge his bloodline, yet marked forever as an outcast. Alternative theories exist too. Some argue he may not be Pentawr at all, but another royal figure whose identity has been lost to time. Others question the interpretation of burning entirely, suggesting that chemical reactions in the resins used may have blackened the body over centuries, creating the appearance of fire. If this were true, then his agony-like expression might simply be the product of natural processes, not a reflection of violent death. And yet, the image remains haunting. Visitors to the museum often linger before him, uneasy in his presence. Unlike other mummies, who seem frozen in dignity, Unknown Man E compels the imagination to wander. Was he a murderer, condemned and cursed? A prince caught in palace intrigues? A young man who died tragically and was embalmed in haste? Or something else entirely? A story lost to the sands of Egypt's long memory? The enigma endures because no explanation fits perfectly. Each theory answers some questions but leaves others unresolved. Science has brought us closer to understanding: DNA, CT scans, chemical analysis, but it has not pierced the final veil. The scream-like face, the blackened skin, the nameless shroud, all continue to whisper of secrets that remain just out of reach. Standing before this mummy, one is struck by the tension between clarity and mystery. We can analyze, measure, and compare, yet the story behind this figure resists certainty. Was he a prince who paid the ultimate price for ambition? A victim of ritual denial of the afterlife? Or simply a casualty of time, his story distorted by centuries of preservation and decay? The truth remains buried with him, sealed within his silent frame. And as we gaze upon his haunting visage, we are left with a question that echoes through the ages. What does the anguished face of Unknown Man E truly reveal? And what secrets of Egypt's royal past still lie hidden in the shadows? In the quiet countryside of Staffordshire, England, among rolling fields and the stately grounds of Shugborough Hall, lies a monument that has puzzled generations. At first glance, it appears simple: a carved relief of Nicolas Poussin's famous painting The Shepherds of Arcadia, framed in stone. Yet beneath it, etched into the surface with deliberate precision, is a cryptic inscription of letters: OUOSVAVVDM. 8 characters, followed by 2 more below, seemingly random, without clear meaning. And for centuries, no one has been able to explain with certainty what they signify. The monument was commissioned in the mid-18th century, likely by Thomas Anson, a wealthy landowner and brother of Admiral George Anson, famed for his voyages across the globe. But while the Ansons left behind wealth, power, and reputation, this inscription remains their most enigmatic legacy. It has resisted decipherment for over 200 years, outlasting empires and baffling linguists, historians, and codebreakers alike. What could these letters mean? Are they initials of a phrase, a cryptic memorial, or perhaps a hidden code designed to protect a secret? The backdrop against which the monument was created only deepens the mystery. In the 18th century, Europe was in the grip of intellectual curiosity, secret societies, and renewed interest in classical antiquity. Freemasonry was flourishing, and noble families often adorned their estates with allegorical art, riddles, and references to hidden knowledge. Was the Shugborough inscription merely a fashionable intellectual puzzle, meant to amuse visitors to the estate? Or was it something more? A message intended for only a select few? Several mainstream explanations have been proposed. Some suggest the letters are simply a memorial, honoring a loved one whose name or dedication has since been forgotten. The DM, for instance, could stand for dis manibus, a common Latin phrase meaning to the shades of the dead, often inscribed on Roman tombs. If true, the inscription might be a personal lament, hidden beneath layers of classical symbolism. Others argue the sequence is a form of devotional acrostic, encoding a religious phrase. The Anson family were known for their interest in theology, and in an era when faith and scholarship intertwined, it would not be unusual for them to conceal a spiritual truth in symbolic form. Could the letters spell out a passage of scripture known only to those with the key? But beyond these plausible interpretations, speculation has reached further into the realm of the extraordinary. Some researchers have linked the inscription to the Knights Templar, the medieval order of warrior monks whose sudden fall in the 14th century spawned centuries of myth. The Templars have long been associated with hidden treasures and secret codes, and because Poussin's painting itself has been tied, at least in legend, to the mystery of the Holy Grail, it has been suggested that the Shugborough monument might conceal knowledge of a sacred relic. Could the letters be a cipher pointing to something concealed beneath the grounds, or even elsewhere in England? During the Second World War, even the mines at Bletchley Park, Britain's renowned code breakers, are said to have attempted the inscription, applying their skills to the puzzle. Despite their success in unraveling the Nazi Enigma code, this simple string of letters yielded no definitive answer. Was the inscription too trivial to warrant their time, or too cleverly designed to be broken? The variety of theories reflects both the allure and the ambiguity of the monument. Some see in it a romantic puzzle, crafted for amusement. Others see a hidden memorial, cloaked in allegory. Still others imagine it as a fragment of a grander secret, one tied to ancient mysteries, esoteric orders, or lost treasures. What complicates matters further is that no original explanation has survived. No diary entry from Thomas Anson, no letter from the stonemason, no commentary from visitors in the years after its creation has shed light on the meaning. All we have are the silent letters themselves, resistant to time, resistant to interpretation. And yet, the monument exerts a peculiar pull. Visitors to Shugborough Hall still stand before it, tracing the letters with their eyes, wondering if perhaps the code is simpler than it appears, an acrostic in plain sight, a riddle that only requires the right mind to unlock. After all, is it not possible that the key has been overlooked, lying quietly in some forgotten archive or tucked within a family record? Or perhaps the mystery is intentional, unsolvable by design. Could it be that the Ansons wanted not clarity but curiosity, a perpetual question to stir the imagination of future generations? A reminder, carved in stone, that not all human endeavors are meant to be explained? In the silence of Shugborough's gardens, with the stone monument standing as it has for over 2 centuries, the inscription remains unchanged. Letters weathered but unyielding, still guarding their secret. Some see them as a memorial, others as a code, still others as a whisper of forgotten knowledge deliberately placed for those who dare to wonder. And so the riddle endures, as enduring as the stone on which it is carved. What meaning lies behind those enigmatic letters? OUOSVAVVDM. A message of faith? A tribute to the dead? A fragment of lost history? Or something far more mysterious, still hidden in plain sight? The answers remain elusive, but one cannot help but pause before the monument and wonder. Could the solution to one of England's most enduring enigmas still lie waiting just beyond our grasp? In museums and private collections across Europe, behind glass cases and carefully lit displays, sit strange bronze objects that seem oddly out of place in the known world of Roman antiquity. They are small, usually no larger than a clenched fist. Each one is shaped into a 12-sided polyhedron, a dodecahedron, its flat faces pierced by circular holes of varying diameters, each corner tipped with a small knob. They are elegant, symmetrical, and precise, and yet, despite being discovered in dozens of locations, stretching from Britain to Hungary, from France to Germany, their true purpose remains a complete mystery. These are the Roman dodecahedrons, artifacts of the empire, cast in bronze, but unlike any other object associated with Roman daily life. Archaeologists have uncovered more than 100 examples, and yet not one Roman text, not one ancient source, makes mention of them. It is as though they existed in silence, crafted, used, and ultimately abandoned without explanation. Why? What were these peculiar objects for? At first glance, one might assume they were decorative. Their geometric form is pleasing to the eye, their craftsmanship remarkable. But the holes, different in size on each face, perfectly aligned, suggest function, not ornament. They were not made merely to sit on a shelf. Mainstream theories attempt to place them within the fabric of Roman society. Some scholars propose that dodecahedrons were tools of measurement, perhaps used in surveying land or calculating distances. The varying hole sizes might have allowed for sighting across fields, aligning roads, or determining angles. But if they were practical instruments, why have no Roman engineers, who documented everything from aqueduct construction to siege engines, ever written about them? Others suggest they may have served as candle holders. When wax residue was reportedly found inside one, the theory gained traction. A candle placed inside could cast geometric patterns through the holes, scattering light in ways both functional and decorative. And yet, no soot marks remain, no consistent evidence of burning. Moreover, the knobs on each corner seem unnecessary for a simple candlestick. Another practical explanation imagines them as knitting tools. The theory proposes that Roman women used the holes to guide yarn, creating gloves with perfectly even fingers. Some reconstructions have shown this to be feasible, but once again, the silence of the historical record leaves doubt. The Romans recorded even the most mundane aspects of domestic life. Would they truly ignore such an object entirely? Beyond these rational possibilities lie more speculative ideas. Some have suggested that the dodecahedrons served as devices for divination. In a world where augury, astrology, and sacred geometry shaped human thought, could these polyhedrons have been ritual objects, their holes aligned to the stars or used in fortune-telling? The number 12 itself carries symbolic weight. 12 months, 12 zodiac signs, 12 gods of Olympus. Was there meaning in their very shape? Others take the astronomical interpretation further, suggesting that they functioned as instruments for determining optimal sowing dates. By sighting the sun through particular holes, perhaps farmers could judge the changing seasons with precision. Indeed, many dodecahedrons have been found in rural areas rather than cities, as though they belonged to communities whose livelihood depended on agriculture. But if so, why were they not standardized? Each example differs slightly in size and design, making uniform use unlikely. A still more tantalizing idea posits that these objects were symbolic rather than practical, perhaps emblems of status or ritual. Their distribution across the far reaches of the empire, Britain, Gaul, the Germanic provinces, suggests they may have been linked to Roman frontiers, where cultures mixed and imperial authority was both enforced and contested. Could they have been badges of office, talismans of power, or offerings left at sacred sites? What makes the mystery deeper is the absence of any written testimony. The Romans documented their world with extraordinary detail. Military campaigns, engineering marvels, religious practices, even recipes for sauces and perfumes. Yet on the subject of dodecahedrons, they are silent. Not a single scholar, general, or philosopher saw fit to mention them. It leaves us with questions that grow rather than diminish. Why create an object of such intricate design and never record its purpose? Why scatter them across distant provinces yet not within Rome itself? Were they part of a localized tradition, Significant to communities on the edge of the empire but irrelevant to the heart of Roman life? Or was their function deliberately kept secret, reserved for a select few who understood their meaning? Standing before one today, polished and enigmatic beneath museum lights, it is easy to be drawn into speculation. The knobs at each corner catch the light. The pierced circles seem to invite interaction, as though urging the observer to pick it up, to turn it in the hand, to try to unlock its riddle. It is an object that demands use, and yet defies it. Perhaps the dodecahedrons remind us that not all aspects of human history can be neatly explained. They sit at the edge of knowledge, whispering of lost traditions, forgotten crafts, or secret practices carried out beyond the reach of written record. Were they tools, toys, symbols, or sacred devices? We may never know. And so, these bronze shapes, scattered across the remnants of the empire, continue to watch us in silence. Their 12 faces look outward, like a puzzle box sealed long ago. The Romans left us aqueducts, amphitheaters, and roads that endure. But they also left us this, an enigma without words, a mystery of purpose and origin still unresolved. What knowledge have we lost, hidden within the hollow chambers of these strange polyhedrons? And what does their silence say about how much of history remains just beyond our reach? In the baking sun of southern Egypt, amid the rose-colored granite quarries of Aswan, lies a monument that was never raised. Carved directly into the bedrock, immense in scale and still tethered to the earth from which it was born, the unfinished obelisk stretches nearly 137 feet in length. Had it been completed, it would have been the largest known obelisk of the ancient world, weighing over 1,000 tons, a single piece of stone, intended to rise like a needle piercing the sky. But it never left the ground. Cracks split its body, frozen in time, leaving behind a monument not of triumph, but of abandonment. The sight is striking. Walking through the quarry, one sees the grooves and channels painstakingly carved by ancient workers. Traces of chisels remain, marks left by hands thousands of years ago. The obelisk lies half-formed, resting in silence as though waiting for an order that never came. In its unfinished state, it speaks more loudly than many monuments completed. It offers a rare glimpse into the ancient process of creation, and at the same time, it deepens the mystery of Egypt's lost knowledge. Why was it abandoned? Mainstream explanations suggest the obvious, a flaw in the granite. As workers carved deeper, cracks appeared across the stone, rendering it unusable for the purpose of raising a flawless obelisk. And yet, one cannot help but wonder, was that truly the only reason? After all, quarrying and shaping such a vast monument required immense labor and planning. Would such a flaw have gone unnoticed until the very end? Did the Egyptians, masters of stone, truly lack the foresight to detect imperfections before beginning? Obelisks were not ordinary monuments. They were sacred, connected to the sun god Ra, designed to stand in pairs before temples, their tips gilded to capture the morning light. Each one was a symbol of divine order, permanence, and the connection between earth and heaven. The decision to create an obelisk of such size, then, was no small matter. It represented ambition on a cosmic scale. That it remains unfinished raises questions that go beyond mere technical mishap. Consider the logistics. Even the smaller obelisks that survive in Cairo, Luxor, or transplanted in Rome, Paris, and London defy imagination. Each was carved from a single block of granite, hauled from Aswan, transported hundreds of miles along the Nile, then raised upright with such precision that it has endured thousands of years. How did the Egyptians accomplish this when modern engineers struggle to replicate the feat? The unfinished obelisk magnifies this question. At over 1,000 tons, it dwarfs those that were successfully erected. How did the ancient Egyptians intend to move it? What system of levers, sledges, or buoyancy tricks along the Nile could have possibly transported such a colossal stone? Even if the cracks doomed it, the fact remains: the attempt was real. They were planning to do the impossible. Some suggest that the project reflects the ambitions of Queen Hatshepsut, the powerful female pharaoh of the 15th century BC, known for commissioning vast building projects. The obelisk, had it been completed, would have stood as a singular testament to her reign. Its abandonment may symbolize the limits of human endeavor in the face of nature's resistance. But speculation often wanders into more shadowed territory. Could the obelisk represent knowledge we no longer possess? Techniques of stoneworking and transportation that have since vanished? Were there mechanical methods, now lost, that allowed the ancients to accomplish feats far beyond what we imagine? Or, as some fringe theories suggest, did the Egyptians possess an understanding of energy, resonance, or even technologies that modern science has yet to rediscover? Others propose symbolic explanations. Perhaps the obelisk was never meant to be finished, a deliberate gesture rather than a failed one. Could it have served as a quarry monument, an eternal reminder of human ambition cut short? Was it a ritual object, intentionally left bound to the earth as a counterpart to those that reached for the sky? Theories multiply. Some argue that the site itself holds secrets, that the quarries of Aswan were not only places of industry but also of sacred significance, where stone was drawn from the womb of the earth for the most sacred monuments. To leave the obelisk half-born, still tethered, may have carried meaning beyond our understanding. Yet, despite the speculation, the stone itself remains silent. The cracks run deep, the chisel marks end abruptly, and the obelisk lies where it was abandoned thousands of years ago. Tourists walk across wooden paths above it, gazing down at a dream interrupted, a project forever unfinished. It is this unfinished state that makes the monument so powerful. Unlike the soaring obelisks that were completed and carried across the world, this one reminds us of fragility. It is a frozen moment in time, revealing not only the genius of the Egyptians, but also the limits of human ambition. And yet, as the desert sun burns against its massive surface, the questions endure. How close did they come to achieving their goal? What tools, what methods, what knowledge were lost when the workers laid down their chisels and departed? The unfinished obelisk stands, or rather lies, as both evidence and enigma, a testament to extraordinary skill and a riddle that continues to defy certainty. Was it failure? Was it intention? Or was it something else entirely? Something we no longer have the language to comprehend. The monument at Aswan reminds us that history is filled with mysteries left embedded in the stone. And as long as the obelisk rests where it was carved, still bound to the bedrock, it will whisper questions into the silence of time. What secrets remain locked within its cracks? And if we could finish the work they began, would we finally understand what the ancients truly knew? At the edge of the desert, where the golden sands of Egypt meet the fertile plain of the Nile, rises a monument so vast and enduring that it has become the very emblem of ancient mystery. The Great Pyramid of Giza towers above its surroundings, its ancient stones weathered by time, yet still radiating a quiet power. Standing before it, one cannot help but feel the weight of history pressing down, a presence that whispers across thousands of years. For centuries, scholars and travelers alike have entered its narrow corridors, tracing the steps of those who built it more than 4,500 years ago. Within, the passages are dark and confining, the air heavy and still. Torches and electric lights reveal walls of smooth limestone, carefully aligned with mathematical precision. And yet, For all we know of this colossal structure, so much remains hidden, secrets locked deep within the stone. The Great Pyramid, built during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu around 2500 BC, has long been considered a masterpiece of ancient engineering. Its purpose, as most Egyptologists agree, was to serve as a tomb for the pharaoh, a monument to eternity. But questions persist. Could it truly be just a tomb? And if so, why does its interior feel so incomplete, so strangely designed, with vast sections seemingly inaccessible, even unnecessary? The known chambers are few. The king's chamber, housing a massive granite sarcophagus, the queen's chamber, smaller and unfinished, and the grand gallery, a sloping passage of remarkable height and symmetry. These spaces have been studied for centuries, their dimensions measured and their alignments charted. Yet, the pyramid is not solid stone throughout. Hidden within its core are voids, cavities, and channels that suggest there may be more within than we currently see. In recent decades, technology has allowed us to peer into the pyramid without breaking its walls. Using a method called muon tomography, particles that rain from space and pass through matter, scientists have been able to scan the pyramid's massive bulk. What they found astonished the world. In 2017, researchers announced the discovery of a previously unknown void above the Grand Gallery. Roughly 100 feet long, this space remains completely sealed off, inaccessible by any known passage. Its purpose is unknown. Is it simply a relieving chamber designed to lighten the weight of stone above? Or could it be something more? An intentional chamber left hidden for reasons we do not yet understand. This revelation reignited debates that have long surrounded the pyramid. Could there still be undiscovered rooms, perhaps holding objects, inscriptions, or knowledge deliberately concealed? Some suggest that hidden chambers might contain Khufu's true burial chamber, still sealed and untouched. Others wonder if the voids might serve symbolic or ritual purposes, designed to mirror celestial structures or to house secrets meant only for the afterlife. More speculative theories push beyond conventional explanations. Could the pyramid have served functions beyond the funerary, perhaps as a temple of initiation, a repository of knowledge, or even, as some fringe thinkers suggest, a machine of sorts, harnessing energy in ways we no longer understand? These ideas remain unproven, yet they persist, fueled by the enduring enigma of the pyramid's design. Consider, for instance, the narrow shafts extending from the king's and queen's chambers. These channels, too small for human passage, point directly toward specific stars in the ancient sky. Were they mere air shafts, as once believed? Or were they symbolic conduits, aligning the pharaoh's soul with the constellations of Orion and Sirius, gateways to eternity? Their presence suggests intent far beyond simple practicality. And if such symbolic planning was embedded in the very architecture, could other chambers have been constructed not for storage or burial, but for cosmological meaning, chambers whose purpose was not material, but spiritual? The Great Pyramid's silence deepens the mystery. Unlike later tombs in the Valley of the Kings, its walls bear no inscriptions, no painted murals, no funerary texts. It is an empty monument, stripped of narrative, as though its builders intended secrecy rather than revelation. Why would the Egyptians, masters of hieroglyphs and ritual art, leave such a structure so bare? Theories multiply. Some propose that treasures and texts were hidden in chambers long sealed, deliberately placed beyond reach. Others argue that the emptiness itself is the message, that the pyramid was designed to embody principles of order and eternity with no need for decoration. Yet, the possibility of concealed chambers tempts the imagination. Explorers have searched for centuries. From medieval treasure hunters to modern archaeologists, countless attempts have been made to break into unexplored sections of the pyramid. Some ended in failure, others in frustration. Yet now, with the aid of non-invasive technology, we stand at the threshold of discovery. What lies beyond those voids may someday be revealed, but for now, the secrets remain locked behind stone that has endured for millennia. The thought lingers. If we were to uncover a hidden chamber, what might it contain? Could it change our understanding of Egypt, of history itself? Or would we find only more silence, a reminder that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved? Standing before the pyramid at dusk, as the sun dips behind the desert horizon, its massive form casts long shadows across the sand. One cannot help but feel that it guards something we are not yet meant to see. Perhaps the hidden chambers are not only within the stone, but within the very limits of our understanding. And so, the Great Pyramid remains both monument and riddle, an eternal puzzle carved into the heart of Egypt. What lies in the darkness of those secret voids? Are they empty spaces, or silent witnesses to knowledge long forgotten? Until the day they are revealed, the pyramid will continue to whisper across the centuries, reminding us how much remains hidden in the depths of human history. In the humid lowlands of southern Mexico, where the jungle presses thick and the air hums with the sound of unseen life, massive stone faces rise from the earth like silent guardians of an ancient secret. Carved from single blocks of basalt, each weighing up to 40 tons, the colossal heads of the Olmec stand as some of the most enigmatic monuments of the ancient world. Their features are bold and deliberate. Broad noses, thick lips, eyes staring with a solemn intensity that seems to look not just outward, but across time itself. Discovered in the 19th century and scattered across sites such as San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes, these monumental sculptures are the most iconic relics of the Olmec civilization, a culture that flourished in Mesoamerica between 1200 and 400 BC. Yet beyond their sheer scale, the heads pose a question that continues to elude definitive answers. Who were the Olmecs, and why did they leave behind such mysterious works of stone? Archaeologists have long regarded the Olmecs as the mother culture of Mesoamerica. They were the first to establish many traditions later refined by the Maya and the Aztecs: monumental architecture, ritual ball games, complex calendars, and perhaps even aspects of writing. And yet, unlike their cultural heirs, the Olmecs left behind no surviving texts, no detailed records of their kings or conquests, no narrative to explain themselves. Instead, they left stone monoliths that speak without words. The colossal heads, some standing nearly 10 feet tall, are believed by many scholars to represent rulers or elite figures. Their distinct headdresses, varying from one sculpture to another, suggest individuality rather than anonymity. If this is true, then these were portraits of leaders immortalized in stone, a way to preserve their power across generations. But if they are rulers, why such emphasis on the face alone? Why not full statues, as seen in other ancient cultures? Some suggest that the Olmecs placed supreme value on the visage, that the face itself was the seat of identity and power. Others argue the heads may have served as guardians, placed at ceremonial centers to watch over sacred spaces. But there is another layer of mystery. How did the Olmecs move these immense blocks of basalt, quarried miles away, through swamps and forests, without the use of the wheel or draft animals? The logistics of transportation alone seem staggering. Basalt from the Tuxtla Mountains had to be dragged over vast distances, likely using wooden rollers, rafts, and sheer human effort. The feat suggests not only advanced planning and engineering, but also a highly organized society capable of mobilizing large numbers of laborers. Such achievements point to a complexity we still struggle to fully understand. And yet, perhaps the most intriguing question concerns not how the heads were made, but what they mean. The faces carved into stone do not easily conform to familiar Mesoamerican features. Some observers have long noted their distinctive appearance, leading to speculative theories. Could they represent foreign rulers, travelers from across the seas, immortalized in the heart of Mesoamerica? Mainstream archaeology holds firmly that the Olmecs were indigenous to the region, their features reflecting the diversity of Mesoamerican peoples. But fringe theories have suggested connections stretching far beyond. Some have drawn parallels to African physiognomy, proposing early transoceanic contact. Others see echoes of Polynesian or even Asian traits. While these theories remain controversial and unproven, they persist, fueled by the undeniable mystery of the head's appearance. Then there are the symbolic interpretations. Could the heads represent not individuals, but deities? Some Olmec art depicts supernatural beings with jaguar features, composite creatures blending human and animal. Might the colossal heads, too, embody something beyond the mortal? A fusion of ruler and god, guardian and ancestor? If so, the heads may not simply be portraits, but embodiments of sacred power. Even their placement adds to the riddle. Many were deliberately buried in antiquity, their faces hidden beneath layers of earth, as though intentionally concealed for future generations, or perhaps ritually decommissioned once their role was complete. Why would such monumental works be buried rather than displayed? Was it an act of reverence, preservation, or something more ominous? The broader Olmec world deepens the mystery. They built sprawling ceremonial centers with pyramids and plazas aligned to celestial events. They developed intricate systems of trade, moving jade, obsidian, and other precious materials across vast distances. Yet when their civilization declined around 400 BC, they seemed to vanish without explanation. What forces drove their disappearance? Environmental shifts? Internal conflict? Or simply the transformation of culture into new forms carried on by later civilizations? The colossal heads, left behind in silence, give no answers. They stare forward with the same inscrutable expression, as though holding their secrets within. Perhaps they were never meant to be fully understood. Perhaps their purpose was to evoke awe, to remind those who saw them that power endures even when words fail. Standing before one of these heads today, amidst the lush greenery of Veracruz or Tabasco, the effect is striking. The stone is cool and ancient, yet the face seems alive, its gaze unbroken by the centuries. One feels both connected and distanced, as though encountering a message written in a language we cannot yet read. What then do the colossal heads truly represent? Were they rulers gazing into eternity, gods watching over sacred spaces, or something else entirely? Symbols of a civilization whose voice has been lost to time. The Olmecs remain a shadowed presence in history, a culture without words, defined by images carved in stone. Their colossal heads stand as both testimony and question, daring us to look into their eyes and ask what we cannot answer. And so, the mystery endures. In their silence, the Olmec heads remind us that history is not only what has been explained, but also what remains concealed. What secrets still lie buried beneath the jungles of Mesoamerica, waiting to be uncovered? And when they are, will we finally hear the Olmecs speak, or will their stone faces remain forever inscrutable? In the heart of modern-day Iraq, not far from the banks of the Tigris River, lies one of the most peculiar artifacts ever uncovered from antiquity. At first glance, it seems unremarkable. An earthenware jar no larger than a hand's span, its clay surface worn with age. But what was found inside transformed it from an everyday vessel into one of history's most puzzling mysteries. Within the jar rested a copper cylinder sealed at the bottom with bitumen, and inside that a narrow iron rod. The components, when examined together, bore a striking resemblance to something modern and unexpected: a simple galvanic cell, or what we would today call a battery. This artifact, often referred to as the Baghdad Battery, was discovered in 1938 during excavations near Kujut Rabu, a village just outside Baghdad. Dated to the Parthian or Sasanian periods, somewhere between 200 BC and 200 AD, it has continued to puzzle scholars, engineers, and historians alike. Could ancient peoples have stumbled upon the principles of electricity nearly 2,000 years before it was officially discovered? When scientists tested replicas of the jar using electrolytes such as vinegar or lemon juice, they generated a small but measurable electric current, just enough to prove that the design was functional, intentional or not. But this discovery opened more questions than it answered. Why would an ancient culture need electricity? What purpose could such a primitive battery have served in a world with no light bulbs, motors, or telegraphs? One prevailing theory suggests that the jars may have been used for electroplating, depositing thin layers of precious metal, such as gold or silver, onto small objects of copper. The method would have allowed artisans to create dazzling ornaments with less raw material, stretching the value of costly resources. This explanation, while practical, remains contested. There is little archaeological evidence of widespread electroplated artifacts from that era. If the technique was indeed practiced, it seems to have left behind remarkably few traces. Other scholars have proposed a more symbolic function. Perhaps the so-called batteries were used in religious rituals, their mild shocks interpreted as divine manifestations. Could a priest, holding such a device, have harnessed this strange force to inspire awe, demonstrating the presence of unseen powers to a believing audience? If so, electricity may have been less a tool of technology and more a weapon of mystery, a controlled glimpse of forces beyond human understanding. Yet some researchers caution against assuming the jar was ever intended to produce electricity at all. They argue the vessel may have had a more mundane use, such as storing scrolls or sacred texts, with the copper cylinder protecting fragile materials from decay. If that were true, the resemblance to a battery might be nothing more than coincidence. But can coincidence alone explain how well the design functions as an electrical device? The debate has encouraged more speculative voices to enter the conversation. Some suggest the Baghdad Battery might be a remnant of forgotten knowledge, evidence of an advanced science that slipped away, only to be rediscovered in modern times. Others stretch the imagination further still, hinting at connections to lost civilizations or even contact with visitors from beyond our world. Such claims remain firmly outside mainstream scholarship, yet they illustrate the profound impact this small artifact has on the human imagination. Perhaps what makes the Baghdad Battery so captivating is not just the object itself, but the broader implications it carries. We like to think of technological progress as linear, a steady climb from primitive tools to advanced machines. But what if knowledge sometimes surged forward, only to vanish, leaving fragments behind? What if the ancients understood more than we give them credit for? The context of its discovery also deepens the riddle. The region of Mesopotamia, cradle of writing, law, and early empires, has always been a place of innovation. From the ziggurats of Ur to the intricate mathematics of Babylon, this land produced knowledge that shaped the course of civilizations. In such a setting, is it truly impossible to imagine that experiments with natural forces like electricity might have occurred, even if by accident? Yet, for all our modern curiosity, the Baghdad Battery today sits quietly in the collections of the Iraq Museum, stripped of its original context by time and excavation. Without written records to explain its purpose, we are left only with conjecture. Was it a tool, a ritual object, a coincidence of design, or a clue to something greater? To stand before the jar is to feel both fascination and frustration. The clay looks ordinary, the metal corroded, and yet the combination whispers of possibilities that stretch beyond the familiar boundaries of history. In that silence lies the greatest mystery of all. Not whether it could produce electricity, but why such a device existed in the first place. Could it be that somewhere in the ancient world, a craftsman stumbled upon the spark of electricity and found a use we have not yet imagined? Or was this artifact a singular curiosity, a forgotten experiment buried beneath centuries of shifting sands? For now, the Baghdad Battery remains unresolved, an object that both belongs to history and defies it. It stands as a reminder that the past is never as simple as we might hope, and that even the smallest discovery can upend our assumptions about what ancient people knew and what they might have dreamed of. And so the question lingers, suspended like a charge waiting to be released. Was this humble clay jar truly a vessel of forgotten science, or have we merely projected our own inventions upon it? Until more evidence emerges, the mystery of the Baghdad Battery remains as charged with uncertainty as the device itself. In the arid desert lands of southern Peru, where shifting sands conceal as much as they reveal, lies one of the most controversial mysteries of the modern archaeological age. Here, near the city of Ica, a collection of smooth, dark river stones has captured the imagination of scholars, skeptics, and seekers of hidden truths. They are known simply as the Ica stones. At first glance, these stones appear ordinary, rounded and worn, their surfaces smoothed by the passage of time. But upon closer inspection, they reveal something extraordinary. Carved into their surfaces are images that defy easy explanation. Men and women performing advanced surgeries, astronomical diagrams depicting planets and constellations, and, most startling of all, dinosaurs coexisting with humans. The stones first came to wider attention in the 1960s, when Dr. Javier Cabrera, a local physician, began collecting them after receiving one as a gift. Over time, his collection grew into the thousands, each stone etched with curious and often baffling scenes. Cabrera believed the images pointed to evidence of a lost civilization, one far older and more advanced than anything we have yet documented in human history. To him, the stones were not curiosities, they were records. Yet the origin of the Ica stones remains deeply contested. Some were said to have been found in caves along the Ica River, others unearthed in ancient tombs. Local farmers often produced them, claiming they had been passed down through generations. But the sheer volume of stones, now numbering in the tens of thousands, has led many to question their authenticity. Could such a vast collection truly have survived undiscovered for millennia? Or is this an elaborate fabrication? When examined under scientific scrutiny, the debate grows even more complex. The stones themselves are genuine. Andesite, a hard volcanic rock abundant in the region. The carvings, however, appear both ancient and modern. Some bear signs of natural weathering, their grooves softened by time. Others seem suspiciously fresh, the incisions sharp and uncorroded. This mix has fueled both belief and doubt, leaving researchers caught between conflicting interpretations. The imagery carved into the stones only deepens the enigma. Scenes of heart transplants and brain surgeries suggest a knowledge far beyond that of pre-Columbian societies. Astronomical maps appear to show awareness of galaxies and planetary systems not officially documented until the invention of telescopes. And the depictions of humans interacting with dinosaurs challenge the very foundation of our understanding of natural history. how could such images exist if they were truly ancient? Mainstream scholars dismiss the stones as modern creations, pointing to instances where local farmers admitted to carving them themselves, often to sell as souvenirs to tourists. For many academics, these confessions close the case. The Ica stones were clever forgeries, nothing more. And yet, the matter is not so easily resolved. The sheer scale of the collection, the diversity of imagery, and the presence of stones whose carvings appear genuinely aged continue to trouble simple dismissal. Could all of them truly be the work of modern hands? Alternative theories abound. Some suggest that even if many stones are modern fakes, they may have been inspired by genuine ancient originals, artifacts now lost or hidden. Others propose that the carvings reflect a cultural mythology, passed down through oral traditions, depicting worlds long imagined rather than realities lived. Then there are those who take the stones at face value, seeing them as evidence of a forgotten chapter of human history. Were they the work of an advanced civilization, one that rose and fell before recorded history began? Could they represent knowledge preserved from a time when humans may have encountered creatures we now consider prehistoric? Or are they messages, encoded symbols meant to be deciphered by future generations who would one day rediscover them? The mystery of the Ica stones is as much about interpretation as it is about the objects themselves. To believers, they represent suppressed truths, artifacts that challenge the conventional timeline of human development. To skeptics, they are reminders of how easily the human imagination can create compelling illusions of the past. Yet, no matter where one stands, the stones continue to exert a strange pull. They lie in museum collections, in private holdings, and in forgotten corners of Peru, their silent carvings still raising questions we cannot quite put to rest. Each stone is like a page from a book with no beginning and no end, leaving us with fragments of a story we may never fully understand. The desert winds continue to sweep across Ica, carrying dust and silence over a land that has seen civilizations rise and fall. Beneath the shifting sands, countless secrets remain buried. Civilizations rise and fall. Beneath the shifting sands, countless secrets remain buried. Are the Ica stones one of those secrets? Or a story we have told ourselves in our search for meaning? As we look upon their strange images, dinosaurs side by side with humans, surgeons wielding tools beyond their age, maps of the stars carved long before telescopes, one question lingers. Are these simply the creations of imagination and profit, or could they be echoes of a forgotten knowledge, a reminder that history holds more mysteries than we dare to admit? The stones remain, silent yet insistent, waiting for us to decide whether we see them as truth, deception, or something in between. And perhaps the greater mystery is not what they reveal about the past, but what they reveal about us, and our endless desire to uncover what still lies hidden. In the vast emptiness of California's Death Valley, where silence seems eternal and the horizon stretches endlessly, lies a place that feels otherworldly. Racetrack Playa, an ancient dry lakebed, cracked and pale beneath the relentless desert sun. The land here is flat, almost unnervingly so, its surface shimmering with heat during the day and dusted with frost on rare winter nights. And upon this barren canvas lies one of the strangest natural enigmas on Earth, the sailing stones. Scattered across the playa are dark, heavy rocks, some no larger than a loaf of bread, others weighing hundreds of pounds. What makes them extraordinary are the trails they leave behind, long, etched lines carved into the desert floor, stretching for meters, sometimes even hundreds of feet. The stones seem to have moved across the playa on their own, sliding silently over the ground, leaving unmistakable evidence of a journey. For decades, there were no eyewitnesses, No one had ever seen a rock move, yet the trails clearly existed. Some were straight and precise, others meandered or even changed direction abruptly, as if the stones had minds of their own. Occasionally, two stones appeared to have traveled side by side, their paths almost in conversation, before parting in different directions. It is a mystery that evokes as much wonder as unease. How could such heavy objects move across the desert floor, unaided by humans or animals? The phenomenon was first documented in the early 20th century when surveyors and visitors noticed the strange tracks. Since then, scientists, explorers, and the simply curious have tried to unravel the riddle. Theories have ranged from the rational to the fantastic. Some suggested powerful desert winds were strong enough to push the rocks, though skeptics noted that even hurricane-force winds would struggle to move such massive stones across the playa's hardened clay. Others imagined magnetic fields beneath the surface pulling the rocks along invisible paths, or that the playa itself might shift, cracking and heaving in a way that carried the stones forward. But then, more speculative voices emerged. Could the rocks be evidence of something beyond the natural world? Were they connected to ancient rituals, or perhaps to extraterrestrial visitors who left behind markers that continue to move under unseen forces? The tracks across the desert floor have even been compared to messages, lines drawn by an unknown hand upon the earth, waiting for someone to read them. Mainstream science eventually offered a more grounded explanation. In recent decades, careful monitoring and the use of time-lapse photography revealed that during rare conditions, a thin sheet of water can pool on the playa after winter rains. When temperatures drop, this water freezes into large sheets of ice. As the ice begins to thaw under the desert sun, it breaks apart into panels that, driven by light winds, can gently push the stones across the slick, softened surface of the playa. The stones move slowly, almost imperceptibly, but their tracks are undeniable. This explanation satisfies many, but not all. Some of the trails show sharp turns or curves too sudden to be explained by drifting ice sheets. Others appear to climb slightly uphill, an action seemingly impossible without an outside force. And while cameras have captured smaller stones moving in this way, the heaviest among them, some weighing more than 600 pounds, remain more difficult to account for. Could thin ice sheets really possess enough strength to move such massive objects? There is also the matter of timing. The conditions required for this movement are rare, occurring perhaps once every decade. Yet the playa is covered in trails, suggesting that the stones have been moving for centuries, long before modern observers could study them. How many times has this silent migration occurred in the past, unnoticed in the vast isolation of the desert? The mystery deepens when we reflect upon our own need to explain it. The rocks may be pushed by natural forces, wind, ice, water, but their movement still strikes us as uncanny. We are unsettled because they seem alive, animated by a will we cannot see. For some, this mystery is not about mechanics, but meaning. Why here, in this desolate corner of the world, do the stones move? What story are they telling in their long, meandering trails? Perhaps the answer lies not only in science, but in symbolism. In the silence of Racetrack Playa, the stones remind us that the earth itself is not still. Forces invisible to us are always at work, winds we cannot feel, temperatures shifting in ways we barely notice, waters that come and vanish with time. The playa is a canvas, and the stones, whether guided by nature or by something beyond our comprehension, are its scribes. And yet, one cannot help but wonder, have we truly solved the mystery? Or is our explanation only partial, a glimpse into a process we do not yet fully understand? Could there be deeper truths hidden beneath the desert floor, waiting to be uncovered by future generations? The sailing stones remain where they have always been, moving silently across Racetrack Playa when conditions allow, their trails etching secrets into the earth. To walk among them is to confront a puzzle that resists certainty. And so, as the desert winds sweep across the playa and the rocks sit waiting for the rare moment when they will drift once more, a question lingers. Are these stones merely passengers of ice and wind? Or are they reminders that the world still holds mysteries we have yet to comprehend?